Okay, so here we are. Let's see. Let's open with some comments until we get some questions. Comments. So I hope everybody's doing well. I'm gonna see people coming in. I want to talk about the recent poll that I put out. And let's see. Any questions? Any comments? Feel free to ask questions. I'm just looking through recent comments to talk about something. Yeah, it's just, well, I'll wait till people get here for that. So, a lot of comments recently. I had an argument with somebody. Well, argument, I mean, wasn't bad. It was a good talk about the Elsa app. Let's see. I don't know. There's not a whole lot of questions recently. So, I guess we'll just wait for people. You can probably, if you're watching this on the replay, you can probably skip ahead like 5 minutes. This live stream's at an earlier time than I usually do it, so let's see who shows up. But let's see. Well, I guess I'll talk about my plans for the near future, which I should probably open my thing here. So, hello. I see we have a few more people. Feel free to ask questions or whatever. But coming up soon in the near future, we are going to be talking more about pronunciation, of course. I'm still working on the logic of the preposition to lesson, and that is going to take a while, but it is in progress. I have some extra practice lessons coming up, and I am also going to be getting to the last, three consonant sounds, the ch, j, and the y consonant. And then we're going to be talking about a special thing, which is the L sound hack. L sound hack. And I've technically mentioned this. Yeah, I did before. It wasn't a big focus, but there's actually a special thing, and we can also talk about that today. I'll go ahead and tell you what the L sound hack is, or what I call it anyway, what I call the hack. So if you've watched my videos about the half L, or the dark L as it's commonly called, and the full L, hello David, the full L, or the light L as it's commonly called, then you know kind of the rules about that. So like if it's at the start of a syllable, like love, life, it's going to be a full L. Hello Steve, welcome to the chat. Feel free to ask questions. I'm just kind of trying to open with something here for the playback. So, but yeah, the half L or the dark L, I call it a half L because you don't bring your tongue all the way up, and dark L is a confusing term to me. So the hack, right? Well, first the dark L, all. So it's gonna probably color the vowel in front of it, all. And there are places to use that. Now the hack is, let's take the word alive, for example. Now live, the L is at the start of a syllable, right? So it's supposed to be a full L. You're supposed to say l, make contact with the tongue, alive. And that's a very nice, clear way to say it. That's the proper pronunciation. That's the full enunciated version of the word. And we will say that even in fast speech, it's not a big deal. But the hack, which I think only happens in American English, I could be wrong, is we really like this half L so much that we can use it pretty much all the time, more or less. Um, we do still use the full L very regularly, very commonly, but especially when we're speaking quickly, we tend to kind of drop it more into like a half L, which the half L to full L, the dark L to the light L, it's really the full range of one sound. Um, like I've talked about recently with some other sounds, but so instead of saying alive, alive, hello unknown, welcome to the chat. Instead of saying alive, right, you can say alive, alive, alive. I think he's alive. I think he's alive. Alive, alive, alive. And if you're trying to speak a little more slowly or maybe a little more enunciated, it's gonna start to sound kind of weird because when we slow down, when we enunciate more, right, that's moving more towards this side of the scale. That's more towards clear enunciation. So it's more likely we're going to do an actual regular L sound. Um, but it is definitely possible to kind of just ignore that when you're speaking quickly or very lazily and just do a dark L or half L sound. Alive, alive, alive. I think he's alive. I think he's alive, alive. Um, so that's the L hack that I'm going to make a lesson on in the near future, probably next week. But I got to finish the consonants too. So, anyway, now that David is here, I have remembered the thing. I know there was a thing. What was it about music and stuff and intentional manipulation of words? So you don't have to remind me about that. But and we'll launch into that after I answer Steve's question. Can the D have DZ sound? Sometimes I think I'm hearing it in the song "Legends Never Die." The singer pronounces "die" with like "zai." Um, yes, you remembered. Yes, I did. Amazingly. Um, can the D have "Legends Never Die"? Legends never die. Um, that actually fits in perfectly with what I'm going to talk about related to Davin's question from Patreon. So that actually is fantastic. It's can the D sound have like a Z attached to it? Not really. um, in actual real speech, no. Maybe there's certain cases like I mean, if you say if there's something plural like I don't know pods, you're gonna have a D and a Z next to each other because the D, at least in most cases, is going to change that S into a Z sound, and that is a very normal thing. But that's because there's an extra sound there. It's not just with the D itself. Um, if there's no Z or there's no S or whatever it is that's in addition to the D sound, you're not going to add a Z between the D and the vowel. That would be extremely weird. Now that does sound kind of like slurred speech. Slurred speech. So like if you're drunk, um, and you kind of start talking like this a little bit, and your words are kind of really right? That's slurred speech. Um, in that case, that actually might happen. You know, like legends never die. Then yeah, that actually makes perfect sense. But in normal speech, no. Now in music, and unknown says, I think you mean the Z and S at the end. Wait, what? I mean the Z and S at the end. I'm so confused. Oh, talking about legends. Yeah, I mean, if that's the case, that's what I just said. But in die, no. um, in music, so let me bring up what David asked before on Patreon. This was like a week ago. I forgot to bring it up, or I forgot to address it before the end of the last live stream. Um, so David asked about a couple songs. There was a scene from James Franco in Spring Breakers where he was playing the piano and singing part of a Britney Spears song. And he has a bit of a Southern accent in that. So I said just to kind of ignore it and whatever. And we're not even going to worry about that. But in an actual song from Britney, in the actual recording on the CD, it's really her. Um, Instead of saying glass at about 116 in the song, I don't remember what song it is. Anyway, it doesn't matter. In the word glass, instead of saying glass, she says like glass or something kind of like that, where she really manipulates sort of the flow between it and the quality of the sound. And this is something that, although technically possible in real speech, um, is only used usually for certain effects or for certain, it's not part of normal speech. It's not the way we normally speak. Like if, sweet means like, oh, cool, that's really awesome. Like that's a really good thing. Oh, sweet, right? And sometimes if, we want to say it in kind of a funny way, we might say sweet, change the S into an SH. Ah, sweet, 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 sweet. Um, Shattered Glass. Is that the song? Yeah, I think that was the song. But so there are very special cases, but not again, not in normal speech. You're going to be drunk. You're going to be singing. You're going to be intentionally manipulating something in a very special case, but not in actual normal speech. Um, with the D and the Z, like in Zai or whatever, I can imagine a singer that, especially if they're being super, super dramatic, and they say, legends never die. And you kind of actually hear this little bit of a Z because when they release the D, they do it in sort of a lazy or slurred way. And that Z kind of comes out between the D and the vowel. Again, it's not supposed to be there, but in music, I can definitely imagine that happening. That would be within the realm of normalness. But I also don't want to give you the impression that all of our singing is just crazy changes to the sound and added things. It's just here and there, usually to fit like the rhythm or whatever it is of the music. So anyway, was there anything else? I feel like there's something else I said about that too. Yeah, so one of the things when listening to music, especially in a language like English with such dynamic pronunciation possibilities, blah, blah, blah. Um, yeah, so I said it is still possible to manipulate the word like this or any word for that matter in real life speech, but it's just as stylistic and for effect, perhaps to sound funny. 99.9999999% of the time, this would never realistically happen for any given word. So, um, yeah. So that's what I have to say about that. Any other questions or things related to that, feel free to uh, ask. Would you say it was hard to settle in and get settled in? Wait, would you say? Okay, there are no quotes. I assume you're asking the phrase, like, would I say it was hard to settle in? And then another phrase, it was hard to get settled in? Is that what you're asking? Like, are they the same thing or do they both work? Is that what we're asking? Oh, I see. Okay. So which one is correct? That's what you're asking. Yeah, or. Um, so yeah, the or versus and is a very important detail. It completely changes it. That makes a lot more sense now. Uh, so would you say it was hard to settle in, or it was hard to get settled in? In this case, I mean the context might matter, but off the top of my head, they mean exactly the same thing. Um, that's one of the things about Git. English grammar doesn't have much of a built-in reflexive structure, where many languages do. Um, well, I mean, I guess I can't say many languages, but in my experience, I know Spanish has reflexiveness built into it. I'm pretty sure German does. I'm not sure about Japanese. I don't remember. But anyway, doesn't matter. We have things like and this is kind of a tangent, but it does address your question. Just hold on. So we have words like myself, right? Like I don't know, I talk to myself in different languages. Okay, whatever. And so who do I talk to? I'm not talking to somebody else. It's back at me, so it's reflexive, right? It's like a mirror image. It's reflecting back on me. Um, and so we have certain words like that, but we don't have a lot of grammatical structure for that. And one thing that Spanish taught me about English, very interestingly, is um, Spanish has this structure like, uh, well, it depends on who it is. It could be me, te, se. I'll just say se for like, whatever. If I say like, I don't know, say, um, no, uh, me pongo, um, nervioso. I think that's right. I was never good with the reflexive structure. It's something I had to go back and study more, and I never kind of got around to it. But um, it's sort of like I get nervous, or it makes me nervous, or something like that. And there's this me and pongo. Pongo is I, like I plus the verb form, and then like I put literally, and then me is like to me. So like I put to myself nervousness or whatever, literally translated. Um, and that's built into the language. Where in English we say I get nervous. Okay, I get nervous, and that's an important point here. Get is one of the ways that English makes a reflexive structure. Um, so when we say to get settled in, it's actually kind of reflexive. It's like it's which it's really weird to talk about reflexiveness like this in English because it's such a strange concept for an English speaker. Um, because we don't think of it that way, but it is how it works. So if you settle in, obviously like you're doing the settling, but if you get settled in, obviously you're still doing the settling, but it's like you're getting yourself, like you're making yourself settled and comfortable, right? um and so it is reflexive even though we don't think of it that way. It's a weird thing. Now not all uses of get do that, of course, but get is one of the common uh that's one of the common uses of get. And there's a reason for that too, but I still haven't pinpointed the exact reason for it, but I'm pretty sure I know the core feeling and logic of get at this point. So, very long way to say that they mean the same thing um, in this particular context. Because sometimes there's not really much of a difference between reflexive and not. It's just any difference that there would be is so small that it doesn't matter. Um, okay, David, by the way, I've also noticed in songs, certain singers changing the E vowel into the second vowel in certain words, like feelings, fillings. Mm. That doesn't sound particularly familiar. Maybe I just never noticed it. Um, you have the benefit of being a non-native speaker and actually really paying attention to sounds. um, but I haven't noticed that, no. If you have any particular examples you could send me, I could verify that for sure, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's weird," but it's possible. Um, thank you, no problem. Steve, in a rap song, the rapper says, and this, apparently today's all about music. In a rap song, the rapper says, "I just be sick," and this J, I think you mean use. This use of just sounds like, oh, I see the J. Okay, this J in just. Um, Yeah, we'll most likely say in because it's the word is like a container and all the letters are inside that container. Um, so the J in just sounds like a flap D. Can this really happen? Let's see. Eres, like Eres be sick? Eres be sick? No, I can't even imagine. I didn't know things. Yeah, no problem. Um, I mean, if you have a link to the rap song, I don't think you can send the link on YouTube. Maybe if you have like the name of it, I can look it up. The song title and artist. I'd probably find it on YouTube, but I can try to verify. But even in the more, the type of pronunciation that you tend to find more in like rap music or hip hop or whatever, um, I can't even imagine that happening in that type of accent. Um, at least not a flapped D. Maybe you're interpreting it as a flap D, but it's not a flap D. But I can't. I don't know why they would say it that way. So yeah, outside of actually listening to the song, I would say no. That it doesn't make any sense. Ski Mask and Keith at you. Okay, let me look this up really quick. YouTube. So Ski Mask. Is that the name of the rapper? That's funny. Ski Mask, Keith, Chew. Ski Mask. That's a. I like that name. That's funny. Um, do we have a timestamp of where this is in the song, so I can find it? Um, I'll answer Unknown's question first. But let's see. How do you differentiate the meaning of, or sorry, the meaning in the word wicked? One means. Oh, so like because there's more than one meaning. Okay, so yeah, how do you differentiate the meaning in the word? Yeah, okay, that does make sense. I read that wrong. One means morally wrong or bad, while the other is like very good and excellent. Okay, good, very good question. We use sick the same way, although that's kind of 90s slang. Wicked is also slang. So the normal use of the word wicked or sick is very negative, right? So sick means you're ill, right? You're physically ill or possibly mentally ill. It could be used for that as well. And so it's a negative thing, not healthy. Where wicked, of course, the normal meaning of that is, like you said, it's like morally wrong or bad. So it's not good. Okay. So like the Wicked Witch, right? And the Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West. Um, Now, both of these words can actually be used in a slang way. I'm not sure exactly where wicked comes from. I think that might be from the 80s, but I'm not entirely sure. Um, sick, I'm pretty sure is from the 90s. Might also be from the 80s. I'm pretty sure it's from the 90s. And when you use it's all the context, right? When you have more than one meaning of a word, the context is everything. And this is where a lot of jokes come from, right? With puns. A pun is a play on words where you have multiple meanings of one word, and you're intentionally for humor, right? To be funny, you intentionally use the other meaning of a word in the obviously wrong context, right? And it creates sort of like a funny situation or funny whatever. But in normal speech, the context will tell us which one you mean. So if you say, "Oh, hey, I I don't know, I got a new car," or something like it's basically a way to say, "Oh, that's really cool, that's awesome," right? "Oh, wicked," or "Ah, sick." Like that's cool. Sick sounds a little bit dated to me. As I said, it sounds like it's from the 90s. Wicked, I think, is still pretty commonly used by a lot of people. Um, but sick is also used. Just I think it sounds a little dated. Um, so that's all it means. It's just a way to say cool. And or like you said, very good, excellent, awesome. So it's the context. Um, I still haven't gotten a timestamp from Steve. Um, I don't want to have to take time to search through the song. Um, so I'll just wait for that. Okay. David, the timestamp is 31. Oh, for schema. Oh, so there you go. And it really does sound more like a D flat T sound. Okay, well, let's see. 31 seconds. 31 seconds. I'll go back a little bit. Go to 27. Okay, so my next question is, are we absolutely sure? Like, are there lyrics that verify that's what he's saying? Because, I mean, I guess he's saying the word just. That's what he means to say, but he's not saying the word just. um, okay, ski mask, shoe lyrics. Um, yeah, I'd just be sick like a sneeze. See, I didn't even understand the word sneeze. I understood the word sick. That was pretty much it. And that's probably because you told me the phrase I'd just be sick. I did not understand the word sneeze at all from his what he was saying. And then all these other things, sick like what, sick like I'm who, I didn't understand that either. This song, at least for me, maybe because I don't really listen to a lot of rap, is very difficult to understand. I really have no idea what they're saying at all. um, so maybe that's just me. Um, in terms of speaking, I would completely ignore that. 1000%. Just completely ignore that. Because even if there are people who talk like that, number one, it's to the average speaker, it's going to be very confusing and unclear. Even if somebody does speak like that, I'm pretty sure it's just because of the music, and it's which it's a very extreme case. It's not something we would normally do in music. It's probably a rap thing. I don't know. Um, these kids and their rap music, I don't know. I don't listen to a lot of rap. So yeah, it's a very strange case, but it definitely does sound more like sort of like a D or flat D type sound. And I would ignore it. Um, and that's also, I want to mention this since we're on the topic of music. There are some people, even at least one polyglot in particular, I'm thinking of Susan. I think it's Susan Zaraisky. Her last name is spelled really weird, but I think it's pronounced Zaraisky. That talk about using music to learn languages, and learning music in very many ways, especially like vocabulary and grammar and this and that. Like it can really, really be super, super useful. When it comes to pronunciation, it can also be useful, but you have to be very, very careful. You have to be very, very careful, especially in a language like English, and especially like, I mean, we have all these different genres. We have different, lots of different accents, and different things depending on what you're listening to and who's singing. Um, so I personally, when it comes to pronunciation, I personally do not recommend songs as a source of pronunciation input. For listening, it's great. For vocabulary, it's great. For grammar, well, grammar, it can be great. Sometimes things are intentionally manipulated to rhyme or whatever, or, so you might get some weird grammar at times that we wouldn't normally say. Um, but I mean, usually things follow the normal structure of the language for the most part. So, um, listening to music is a really great thing, and it's a great way to get a lot of good input. But as a source of pronunciation, I do not recommend songs. Um, but it is also interesting to notice these things, um, because one thing, another detail, really quick. I've been on and off studying Japanese for many, many years. Going almost on 20 years now, more off than on, but going on 20 years now. And so I've listened to a lot of Japanese music. I like Japanese music. I still listen to Japanese music. I was listening to it this morning. But I noticed a long time ago, that this is when I first noticed the LR problem in Japanese, because they don't have an L sound. They have an R. It's what we would interpret as an R. It's more like a D and an L combined. That's how it's usually described. But they don't actually have a L. right? They have like ra, it's like sort of like a tapped R almost. Like roku is six. Roku, roku, roku. I'm probably not doing that perfectly, but whatever. But sometimes you'll hear Japanese speakers say loku, loku. It's a very clear L to anybody who has an L in their native language. But a Japanese speaker won't hear it because they don't have the L in their language. They'll interpret their brain will interpret it as an R in their language. Um, and that shocked me because that was the first time I noticed something like that in any language. Again, this was a long time ago. This is at least 10 years ago. Um, and I was like, wow, they're actually saying an L. Like that's crazy. And that happens in regular speech, but I notice, at least in my experience, it seems to happen a little bit more in songs. And I don't know if that's because maybe the flow and rhythm in music is a little more conducive to making solid contact with the tongue. Um, so I don't know. But sometimes music can change things. Okay, how do you differentiate? Oh, we were talking about that. In a song, it says, "Faces look ugly when you're alone. Women seem wicked when you're unwanted. Streets are uneven when you're down." Um, that sounds kind of familiar. Um, how should I look at it? Like, what do you mean? How should you look at it? In terms of pronunciation, grammar. Oh yeah, duh. Because your previous question. Yeah, that makes sense. So the word wicked. Okay. Faces look ugly when you're alone. Women seem wicked when you're unwanted. Yeah, so that would be a negative connotation, right? Because think of it, right? Faces look ugly. That's negative. When you're alone, that's negative. Women seem wicked when you're unwanted. If you're unwanted, that's negative. Nobody wants you. Streets are uneven. Streets are supposed to be nice and even and smooth, but streets are uneven, which was negative. It's bad. When you're down, when you feel bad, you don't feel good, right? You feel down. Um, so everything in this is negative. So the meaning of wicked is going to be negative as well. Um, yeah. Good. David, back to David. Hello, Gabriel. I see you have said hi, so welcome to the chat. Um, we're having a nice little conversation, mostly focused around music, but of course we can talk about anything. So, David, read the feeling thing. Yes. Check out Beyonce's song "Feeling Myself." 7 to 19. It sounds like she's singing feeling. Let's see. That's not the right tab. Okay, YouTube was what? Beyonce. Feeling myself with that. Okay. Um, I'm getting Nicki Minaj featuring Beyonce, so I guess that's the right song. Um, let's see. It was timestamp 7 to 19. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, so I know what you're talking about now. That happens. That can happen. No problem unknown. You're welcome. Um, it does sound more like the second vowel. And in fact, if I had never heard the song before, which I have not, and it randomly came on the radio, so I can't see the lyrics, I can't see the name of it. Nobody said the name of the song. It just starts playing. I would assume that she is saying filling, not feeling. With she's actually saying the second vowel. Um, and I would assume that's what she means, which obviously is a very different meaning. Um, so that can happen, yes. I mean, I don't really know what else to say. It can happen. Just be aware of it. Um, it could also be based on how the person speaks, because I've heard people who, again, speak more It's always a touchy subject, potentially touchy subject. People who, with the pronunciation that you might hear more in like rap and hip hop and whatever, people who speak more with that type of natural accent, um, I think are maybe a little more likely that even in their normal speech to sort of make the E sound like in some cases, like feeling or filling. Um, I have noticed that. So it could actually be based on the speaker and not necessarily because it's a music thing. That sounds like a better explanation to me. You're very welcome, Steve. Um, and then also in another Britney song, "My Prerogative." Yeah, it's such an old song. She sings, "I really don't know the deal about my sister." 42 for I really don't know the deal about. Let's see. Okay. My prerogative, Britney Spears. 42. Yeah, 42. Let's see. Are you sure it's timestamp 42? Because she's not saying that at all. um, Maybe it's 142. Sometimes I forget the first part. Nope, not 142 either. 242. Nope, not that either. Are you watching the music? Yes, I am watching the music video. Why is it slightly different in the music video? Any other questions? Feel free to ask. Or experiencing technical difficulties. Yes, it's different. Okay, interesting. That also happens sometimes too. You get different, slightly different versions of the same song. Usually, it's like a radio edit thing where they filter out the curse words and stuff. But sometimes you get little differences. That can happen too. I don't know why we do that, but whatever. Okay, so I'm gonna look for the. I mean, I guess I won't necessarily be able to tell, but I'll go to something that's not the music video, and let's see. Um, this is from Britney Spears' channel. 42 seconds. Yeah, that is different. Okay. Yeah. So she's not fully getting up into the E. 54. Well, I'm still hearing it at 42. I played a different song or a different thing. Let's see. Yeah. Anyway, um, the video I'm watching is at 42 seconds. But yeah, she does say that. I really don't know the deal about my sister. Um, which is also, it's also kind of strange that she's saying about because we can do that, but much more likely we say the deal with someone or something. Um, so that's also a little special. But why do natives say last year? Like, okay, I'll come back to that. That's a good question. It just occurred to me that many people will neutralize the e vowel and make it sound, or sorry, make it the second vowel in really, really. Yeah. So it might have something to do with the L. That's where I was going. Um, this is a particular detail that I haven't consciously noticed too much, and I haven't really explored. But now that we're on the topic, and I think about it, um, even in regular speech, I think so. Um, Remember the way that I teach the with the R colored vowels. So I think if I remember right, according to most resources for like general American English, they teach you that there's the R colored I think. So it's like R colored second vowel, ear or something like that. And the way I teach it is that you could do that, or you can go all the way up into E and say ear, and they're the same thing. Like it's sort of like a whole range. As long as you're in that, you're going to sound perfectly fine. Um, and that's because the E and the in isolation, or not necessarily in isolation, but when there's no other vowels, like if I say, beat and bit, okay, those two are very, very clear to a native. Like, I mean, maybe we get kind of lazy with something and whatever, but those are pretty distinct. Okay, and we know this is a problem for English learners. Trying to find the line between these. But when you start coloring the vowels, the R color obviously is going to make it sound different. Ear, air, R, or. Okay, and it doesn't quite sound like the vowel itself anymore. You start in the same position. It's like it's there, but the R sort of changes it because you're sort of blending it into a different position. With the L, it's the same thing, right? Except we can L color all the vowels. We don't R color all the vowels. So eel, ill, L, all, or al, all, o, with the schwa, which I don't really do the L colored schwa, I don't think very much. Usually I make it a high schwa. Earl, technically you can L color the vowel Earl, like girl, world. Ul, ol, and ul with a high schwa. So that also makes it sound a little bit different. And when you color E or I, just like if I clearly say ear and air, right, side by side, maybe as an English learner, you don't quite hear the difference, which is fine because you don't have to. Me as a native, side by side, I can hear a difference. Okay. Normally in the flow of speech, you're going to hit anywhere in there and it's going to sound perfectly fine. But side by side, there is a bit of a difference. Just like if I say eel, ill, okay, you can hear a difference. But it's not as clear cut as E and I, right? Because we have that same end position ear, ear, eel, ill. Um, and because E and I are already pretty close together, and they're up in the front there, I think that's what's causing this. So it could be the way that some people speak. More likely, I think that it's actually a form of slightly lazier speech, where we just don't quite get up into the E, and that's how it comes out. And again, it's just a special case with E and A. This, normally we want to get clear enough, but this actually is sort of changing the vowel. She's actually saying the second vowel instead of the first vowel. And in this case, it's okay for these two sounds. Okay. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. And whatever. If you have any other questions, of course, then we can follow up on that. So unknown asks, why do natives say last year like last year, last year, last year? It's a very good question. It's a very, very good question. And it's something that I'm going to be talking about more in a future lesson. And I have mentioned it here and there in some videos. I think mostly the listening analysis or the pronunciation analysis videos. But this is a linking rule. And it's not remember the dynamic range, quality, and flow of American English speech. Okay, real natural American English speech. We have the fully enunciated to increasing speed, increasing laziness, all the way to a dropped sound. Okay. Now, T and Y between words, this is the basic rule. Okay, rule. This is the basic linking or connection rule. T is up here and Y is kind of just behind it, right? Now, if we're speaking really quickly or a little bit lazily, we're very, very likely to, instead of release the T and then go to the Y, it's a lot easier to just kind of push that T into like a CH because CH starts in the T and then you push an SH through it. and it creates a CH. T, sh, ch. Okay. Now the Y is right there. So it's actually a lot easier and faster to blend the T into a CH by pushing, keeping the flow of air pushing through the T, which creates an SH sound, and then going into the Y. And so the T disappears and is replaced by a CH. Okay. The Y also disappears because that's what's helping to create this lever that blends into the CH. So instead of saying last year, we say last last year. And there's going to be maybe a little bit of a Y sound left, but it doesn't matter. That's not an important point. It really sounds like cheer, like there's just an E sound because E and Y sound pretty close already. And that's another reason. So it's all physical proximity between how the T works, how the CH works, how the Y and the E are kind of close together and sound kind of similar, and we get this special blend. Okay. Now that happens very commonly, very, 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 very commonly. And what many teachers say, including, as far as I know, Rachel's English, because somebody pointed out to me a video about the T sounds um, a little while ago. It's very loud. A lot of noise outside. Let me know if that's a problem. And a lot of teachers will say that this only happens when you're going from a word that ends with T to the word you or your, right? So if I say is that what you want? It's off the top of my head. So I say, oh, is that, the thing you want? Is that what you want? What you want? Um, or, oh, that's what you're thinking. I understand. That's what you're thinking. Um, and that definitely does happen. Uh, more often than not, way more often than not. It's just a normal linking part of the language. It's not a problem. But this can also happen. I don't pay attention to a lot of other teachers, but I don't think any other teachers talking about how this can apply without the word you or your. And it does. I've noticed it very naturally from people around me, and also from myself since I've been trying to pay attention to it. God, that is so loud. I really hope that's not a problem. So that should make sense, I hope. There's something else I wanted to say about that. Oh, yeah. Of course, if you speak a little more slowly, a little more enunciated, then we're a little more likely to keep that T sound and the Y sound as two separate sounds. Okay, that's always possible. It's always possible. Um, it's not likely, but it's possible. The full pronunciation, like all the sounds, as long as it's not actually just a silent letter in the spelling, but it's actually supposed to be there in full word, it's always possible that every single sound in a word, reduced or not, could come out. Okay, that's one of the things that makes English so messy. So you can say last year. Last year I was blah, 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 blah. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. It will come out that way sometimes, especially if you're speaking more slowly. Maybe you're thinking like, last year, what was I doing? Last year. Okay. Or you can say last year, right? Even if you're speaking more slowly, you can still kind of blend it because it's very easy. It's a lot easier to do it because it's a normal linking rule. Okay. It's not just a speed thing in this particular case. Interestingly, one more detail here. ST at the end of a word, 9 times out of 10, the T disappears. It's not stopped. Technically, we can stop it, and on occasion, you will hear it stopped if there's nothing for it to connect to. But it's kind of hard to stop a T after an S, and so 9 times out of 10, we'll just drop the T completely. Okay, we won't even say it. And so last is most commonly said las, just like LAS, las. Now, can you say last year? You can. That's another variation. That's another way to say it. So you have last year, very clearly enunciated. Last year, just completely dropping the T and keeping the Y, or last year. Normally, T and Y will blend into ch, but there's no S, right? Once you bring that ST plus Y, now you have two possibilities, okay? Um, this is the kind of stuff I'm trying to teach you guys because a lot of, I mean, again, I don't pay attention to a lot of other teachers, but in my experience and what I think many other teachers teach is sort of just like the basic, like these are the rules, this is how it goes. And then you don't really get a lot of like the real like variation and oh, actually three things are possible here. You might hear all three of them, even from the same speaker within 2 minutes of each other. Um, these are things you have to get used to. And it's not about memorization of rules. It's about opening your ears, learning what actually happens in the language consistently and regularly, what's possible, and just getting used to that, right? But you have to notice it first. And my job, part of my job, is to bring it to your attention, not so you can memorize a rule, but so that it becomes part of your conscious awareness and you start noticing it and it becomes natural to you. And of course, you can work it into your speech if you want. Through shadowing and other things like that. Okay, so another long-winded answer for a very simple question. You are welcome. I don't know. For some reason, YouTube wants me to is asking if I want to accept that message. There's nothing wrong with that. Also, H in but her. It sounds like yeah, okay. Yeah, we're gonna come back to that as well. That's another thing. But I have other questions. Okay, so David, it just occurred to me many people will neutralize the eva. Oh, I already said that. We already went over that. Yes. Okay, so Gabriel, I have a question about the word them. Okay. I've seen Americans with an S pronounced as a Z, Americans using them, the word them, in a way that I don't understand. Like, I'm surprised YouTube didn't grab that one for review. Clap them cheeks. Yeah. Them is referring to those. Okay. There are several uses of them. The most basic, obviously, is just a pronoun referring to like they as an object. So give it to them, as in more than one person, um, or possibly more than one item. Like I like them, meaning all the books. Okay, that's easy. Okay, no problem. Them can also be, or they or them can also be used in reference to the general, not the general you, the he or she. When you don't know if it's a male or female, you say like, someone could walk up to you and they just punch you in the face instead of he or she. In fact, that's grammatically incorrect, and some we call them grammar Nazis will tell you that you're a horrible person for doing that. But it's a very, very common way to speak that pretty much everybody uses. In this case, this is a very special use of them, and you you found an interesting phrase in which it's used. But this is an intentionally incorrect, grammatically incorrect use of the language, intentionally incorrect. That sounds incorrect, but it's being used for a particular effect with a particular sound. It sounds very informal because it's an intentional breaking of the language. It's a common intentional breaking of the language, so it's a normal thing, but it sounds very informal, um, especially depending on what you're talking about. So another way that we do this, like for example, if I say, "I'm gonna get me a soda," right, or a beer. Let's say a beer. I'm gonna get me a beer, right? So I'm gonna go to the store. I'm gonna buy a beer, and I'm gonna drink it. Okay. Normally, you say, "I'm gonna get a beer." Maybe you say for myself, right? That would be the reflexive way to say it. I'm gonna get a beer for myself. Usually that's implied. Um, but we can use this intentional breaking of the language to make it sound a little more informal, a little bit special in a way. It just has a certain effect. Like, I'm gonna go get me a beer. Like, it has a certain feeling to it. So sometimes we do that with pronouns. And you are correct that yes, them in that case would be referring to these or those, because cheeks is it's supposed to be cheeks, not checks. Clap them checks. Yes, it should be cheeks. That's how I read it originally, but I noticed actually it's spelled checks, so it should be two e's and no c. Um, unless you meant checks, in which case I'm not. That's a less common phrase that I haven't really heard. Um, anyway, it's an intentional breaking of the grammar. That's the answer essentially. Why do we do that? I don't know. We do, but it sounds very informal, as I said. So you can ignore it. You don't have to use it for sure, um, but you should be able to understand it. Because you'll hear it sometimes. Ariana Grande has a song that says, "Just give me them babies." Okay, so another one. Would this them? What this them? Yeah. What does this them mean? Or oh, I see. What do okay? See, you need to put quotation marks around them because I have no idea how to interpret this. uh, what does them mean in these contexts? That would be the correct way. Know this. What does them? What does them mean? Although okay, I guess you could say this because you're thinking of like this use of them. So what does this them mean? Yeah, okay, that would be fine. But we need does. Okay, give me them babies. I mean, she could be referring to a number of different things, but it's the same as before. It's an intentional, informal breaking of the grammar for a particular effect. Um, it's really hard to describe how it feels and like why we do that, but it exists. I haven't put in a whole lot of thought into that, but it's just a weird thing that sometimes we do. So I don't know. In a lot of songs, singers, in a lot of songs, comma, helps the flow of reading. In a lot of songs, singers pronounce, which, okay, so I noticed you did this twice. I don't know if it's a typo. So you're writing pronounce, but it's supposed to be pronounce because it's pronunciation. This is a common problem. Usually, English learners will say pronounce and pronunciation, but I notice you're typing pronounce. And so you're probably thinking it's like pronunciation and pronounce, like to pronounce something. Again, unless it's a typo that you did more than one time. But yeah, it's the verb is pronounce with ow, and then I'm spelling ou, and then the noun we drop the o and we change the ow to pronunciation. So it's a stupid thing we do, but we do it. Okay, so in a lot of songs, singers pronounce get as I have no idea how to interpret that. If we're using my convention with the two e's, which I assume we are, then it would be geet, geet. Um, okay, and more as mo. Can that happen in real life? Okay, so mo is an example of like I was talking about earlier with sweet, instead of saying sweet, it's like it's an intentional manipulation of the sound to create a certain effect. Kind of like with them, but that's a grammatical manipulation. It's not it's not a normal part of speech. It's not something that is very common, but it is something that we can do to sort of like I need mo money, you know, and I might do that. Say I don't know if I'm feeling kind of weird and um, I want to give a certain feeling probably to be kind of funny, or whatever. But say I don't know, I pay the water bill. My roommate is going to give me the money, and she gives me I don't know $5, but she needs to give me $10. So I say mo money. I need mo money. Right? It's a very intentional breaking of the language. There are some people who might just speak that way. I don't know. Um, but in actual regular speech for Western American, General American, most speakers in the country, um, no, it's not part of actual speech. It's only used for certain effect at certain times. Um, as for geet, I assume it's geet. Um, I didn't know that. Thanks. Yeah. Um, I'm not sure. Since you're using EE, I assume we're using my conventions, and it would be geet. But I don't. That sounds really strange to me. Like, if you have an example, I can listen to it for sure. I've never. I don't think I've ever noticed that. Um, the only thing I can think of saying geet instead of git, because we do say get with the second vowel. It's supposed to be get with the third vowel, but we commonly reduce it to git, like most of the time. But saying geet, if you're trying to sound like a stereotypical uneducated Southerner, which is a really horrible stereotype, but it exists outside of the South. Um, there's a way of speaking where we might, try to mimic that stereotypical uneducated sound, which is like, I don't know, if I say like get, I don't know, go get me a beer or something, or I say go get me a beer, get get me, you know, because there's a bit of a vowel change in the South and this and that, whatever. So I don't know. That's the only reason I can think of somebody saying get as geet. That sounds very, very strange to me. But I could be wrong. Maybe I just haven't noticed it in music, or maybe it's music I don't really listen to. It could be maybe it's a rap thing again. I don't know. Mo also sounds kind of like it's more like a rap hip hop type thing. It's much more common in that type of music. So, um, let's see. Yeah, which by the way, I should mention. Again, there's nothing wrong with anybody's pronunciation. Like I don't care where you're from. I don't care, how you pronounce words. If it's the natural way that you natively speak and you grew up speaking that way, it is valid and acceptable. That being said, for the average English learner who is learning American English, um, unless you want to specifically talk in the way that a person speaks outside of what we would, I guess, say general American, which would be middle of the country, and Western American, because it's under the same umbrella. So, like, if you want to speak like a Southerner, for example, which is not general American, um, just as an example, or you want to speak like a New Yorker, you can do that. That's perfectly fine. But understand that if you're not doing that and you're trying to improve your pronunciation for more of like a general American type sound, and you're listening to a lot of rap music, again, nothing wrong with rap music, nothing wrong with the pronunciation, but you're listening to a lot of that and you're saying, oh, why is he saying this sound? Oh, why is he saying that sound? It's probably because of the genre and or the way that that person naturally speaks in real life. Um, and so, again, I don't think that music in general is a good source of pronunciation input, but that in particular, certain genres, depending on what pronunciation you're trying to acquire for yourself, certain genres are going to be extra bad for your particular pronunciation learning. Um, Again, not that there's anything wrong with them, it just depends on your goals. So keep that in mind with, I'm not saying like if you like rap, listen to rap. Like that's perfectly fine. But don't use it as a source of pronunciation learning. Um, and notice things, of course, you know, that's fine. But don't try to adjust your speaking to that. So let's see. This happens with D and Y becoming J, right? Okay, so talking about like the t and y, that was a while ago. Sorry, the t and y becoming ch. It's exactly the same with d and y because for all the same reasons. Plus, t is voiceless, ch is voiceless, D is voiced. So what happens if you make the exact same combination, but you add voice to it? Well, j is the voiced version of ch. So just like d is the voiced version of t, we get a parallel change that matches perfectly. So if I say like, would you, you'll very commonly hear would you, would you. The Y disappears, the D and the Y blend into a J, and the D and Y disappear. Would you? Or would ya if we reduce you to ya. Okay. Unknown. Also H in but her. It sounds like er. I'm pretty sure the IPA symbol is one of the R sounds. Yeah. I think that's supposed to be like an R colored schwa or something. I don't know. Anyway, it's an R sound. You can look it up. Talking about Gabriel, you can look it up on Urban Dictionary for various meanings of it. Oh yeah, Gabriel talking about them. Yeah, sometimes the Urban Dictionary is a very good resource. Um, Depending, there are things where me, because I'm an uncool 30-year-old millennial who's definitely out of the loop at this point. Um, so there are some things that I'll find in text chat or something here or there that I'm like, what is that? And I have to look it up on Urban Dictionary. So it is a potentially useful resource. But okay, also H and but her. So these two words, in the flow of normal, fast speech, lazy speech, not particularly enunciated, just normal everyday speech. This is going to sound exactly like this word, exactly the same. Now, in both of these cases, there's a reason for this. So, butter in American English, it's spelled with two T's, but it's just a flap D. Okay, it becomes a flap D because we have all the parameters there to create the flap D. So, butter, butter. Okay, so we're flapping and going to butter. Now, with but her, if you more clearly enunciate that, you're going to say but her, right? And you're going to hear the H, you're going to hear the T. But there are two connection rules here that can combine to create the exact same pronunciation as the word butter. The T, when it's at the end of a word, if it connects to a vowel at the start of the next word, it becomes a flap D in American English. But we have the H there. That's not a vowel. Except the H sound at the start of a word, if it's actually there, sometimes it's just silent, like in the word hour, there's no H there. But if the word is, or if the H is actually supposed to be there, and the previous sound is a consonant sound, any consonant sound that could connect to the vowel after the H, what will very commonly happen, not all the time, especially not if we're clearly enunciating, but what will commonly happen is the H, because the H is just air, it's just breath, it's not really a sound. It will disappear, it will sort of be taken over by whatever consonant sound, voiced or voiceless, it doesn't matter. And that consonant sound will connect over to the vowel. This very commonly happens even more so with function words like him, his, her, hers, whatever. But even if it's at the start of a stressed syllable or word like hit or history or whatever it is, it's still possible. It's a little less likely, but it's still possible, especially in really fast speech. So, um, these two rules, the T connecting and becoming a flap D when it connects to a vowel between two words, and then the H disappearing, will combine to create the exact same pronunciation as butter. Okay. Um, so yes, you are correct. It sounds, well, I wouldn't write it the way you did, like but and then the sound. But technically, yes, you are correct with that. Um, Okay, and some other questions here. Gabriel, I'm gonna look into it. Okay, good. Look into it. Very nice grammar there. Very nice. David, can I use your native superhuman hearing one last time to decipher a couple things in a Janet Jackson song? I don't know. I don't know. I suppose. I mean, that's not like that's what I'm here for or anything. Not a problem. Not a problem. Yeah. I mean, you can. I don't care if it seems like we're beating a dead horse. If you have questions, there are no stupid questions. Um, there's always more examples to be explored, reinforcement to be had. So, yeah. Anything you want to ask me, feel free to do that. Just send me the particular song and the timestamp that we're talking about and what it is that we're focusing on, and we'll look into that. Okay, Renato Huamani. Probably not saying that very well, but okay. Hello. Took me a second to get to you. I apologize, but here we are. Hi, I have a question about the pronunciation of double O words. Oh, yeah, good question. Very good question. Okay, why is the word room pronounced ed ending, but pronounced with a T because the S sound in pronounce? Anyway, why is the word room pronounced different? It's supposed to be differently, but we say different too. That's fine. Different than poor. Thank you. This again is why I tell you guys over and over and over. I don't talk about it as much now because I talked about it a lot in the vowel lessons. I haven't been making a lot of vowel lessons recently, but I tell you guys over and over and over and over and over and over again, and I will continue to tell you, do not focus on the spelling in English. You need to know how to spell in order to write. So it is something you need to know, but you focus on the sound first, okay? The English writing system is not phonetic. That's the basic answer to your question. Why? Because it's not a phonetic writing system, okay? In fact, OO is particularly bad because, let's see, we have room, which is an oo vowel sound. We have book or took or shook or look, which uses the sound I call the high schwa, okay? It's not actually a schwa, it's just my special name for it. Okay, so we have oo, we have in your example, Poor, that's poor, so that's an R colored O, poor. Point is it's an O, it doesn't matter if it's R colored or not, but it's an O sound. And there's other cases too. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any other things where OO might be pronounced with a different sound, but there are probably a couple other examples where it's something else. But notice it's really those back vowels, oo, o, kind of up in that upper back area, more or less. Common spelling for all of these. There are probably etymological reasons, like historical reasons related to the words, where the words come from, the pronunciation changes throughout the history of English, back through Middle English, maybe even into Old English in some cases, long time ago. It doesn't matter why. For this particular case, it doesn't matter why. The important thing is focus on your ears. Remember how it's spelled. Yes, you have to remember how it's spelled. But I would much rather you focus on your ears and be able to properly hear and pronounce the correct sound and misspell it sometimes, or maybe have to double check the spelling because you don't completely remember, which natives do. Sometimes we have to double check the spelling because our script is not phonetic. So even us as natives, as educated natives, we have to sometimes double check the spelling of something. It's just what happens in a language like this. I would much rather you do that than memorize the spelling, but not be sure about what the pronunciation is. Okay, that's backwards. You want to do it the other way. And most teachers will teach you the backwards way, in my experience. So, moving on, is there a difference between studying takes a lot of time and studying takes up a lot of time? Very good question. Make sure I didn't skip anything. I don't think I did. Okay. Studying takes a lot of time. Studying. So, the preposition up. There's going to be a lesson about the logic of the preposition up. And without getting into the logic right now, because we don't have to, that's not why I mention it. I mention it because what I'm going to tell you, you're going to see more in that lesson again later. But up, sometimes we like adding certain prepositions for no reason. It doesn't change the meaning. Maybe it emphasizes. That's usually what happens. It'll like emphasize it. And not all prepositions are used this way. Um, it's a very particular thing that you really have to know what's going on and know, like, be familiar, like hear it be said, multiple times. It's a high level thing, I would say. But that aside, up is probably the single preposition that is used most in this way, where it's just added without being necessary or changing the meaning in any way. And this is a perfect example. So if you say studying takes a lot of time, okay, so you're studying and it takes a lot of time. There's a lot of time that is used for studying. Okay. Studying takes up a lot of time. Well, to take up time is the exact same meaning as take time. The up makes it sound a little bit stronger, kind of, in this case. Makes it sound a little more complete, which is very important for the logic that we're going to talk about in the future whenever I make that lesson. I'm still working on two. And it adds some flavor to the statement, but that's all it does. It just adds some flavor. It doesn't really do anything else. Um, why? Because it's English. And we like this. I wouldn't say this is a phrasal verb necessarily. I guess this would classify as a phrasal verb, but my strict definition of a phrasal verb is you need a change in meaning. Because sometimes you'll see a verb and a preposition next to each other, and it might just be the preposition that the verb uses normally. That's not a phrasal verb. But here we're adding it, and it's kind of becoming a phrasal verb, but we're not really getting a change of meaning. Or at least an addition to meaning, if nothing else. And that's not particularly happening in this case. But yeah, my thought just out the window. Studying takes a lot of time. Studying takes up a lot of time. Yeah, so it feels kind of more like a completion, like a tightening up. Like if you say it just takes a lot of time, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a perfectly normal, common statement. No up, just it takes a lot of time. It's a statement or a description. Okay. Takes a lot of time, not a little time. But if you say something takes up a lot of time, the extra feeling is like it's like it ties up your time, right? To tie up something is like to completely, you know, tie it together or mix it up. It's all tied tightly. Um, so if it takes up a lot of time, it's like there's time that you maybe want to use for other things, but it ties up that time. It takes up that time and says, okay, this is for studying. It's locked. You can't change it. You can't move it. And that's not the direct literal meaning, but it kind of feels that way. It gives that little extra flavor to the feeling. It's a very minor thing. I wouldn't worry too much. They mean the same exact thing. These two phrases. Um, okay, so following up on what I was talking about, I read a native's writing about this on a forum. Well, if you have I don't, I guess YouTube won't let you put a link. Yeah, if you put a quote, they're slightly different in meaning. When you say being a doctor takes a lot of time, the reader would think that, oh yeah, it's about 4 years of postgraduate schooling. That is a lot of time. On the other hand, when you say being a doctor takes up a lot of time, the reader gets a feeling that being a doctor is an all-consuming process. You should study a lot. You would have only limited free time, etc. The focus is not merely on the schooling length, but on the time it takes. Okay, so let me. When you say being a doctor takes a lot of time, the reader would think, "Oh yeah," well, the reader or listener, but would think, "Oh yeah, it is about 4 years of school, of postgraduate schooling. That is a lot of time." Okay. Okay, yeah, yeah. On the other hand, when you say being a doctor takes up a lot of time, okay, in this context, there is a difference. In this context, there is a difference. Um, if you're just talking generally about studying, right? It's the same in both. Studying takes a lot of time, studying takes up a lot of time. There's no change in the context there. in this case, when we're talking about being a doctor, okay, being a doctor takes a lot of time. That sounds like the process of studying, like becoming a doctor. Because being a doctor, in the sense of you already are a doctor and your existence as a doctor takes a lot of time, that doesn't make any sense. So we're going to interpret it as the time of learning to become a doctor. That's implied. It should be becoming a doctor, but we might say being a doctor. Um, it's a very subtle, less common use of being that's probably incorrect, but it actually means becoming in this case. So that's absolutely correct. Um, on the other hand, when you say being a doctor takes up a lot of time, now it sounds like you are a doctor and it's taking up your time. It's tying up your time, like I was describing before, taking time away from other things. Okay, you have a limited time, exactly like this native is saying in this forum. Um, the focus is not merely on the schooling length, but on the time it takes out of the student's life. Um, Now, that last part is a little weird to me because I would say in the second case, being a doctor takes up a lot of time. That doesn't sound like they're a student anymore. To me, I would interpret that as they are a doctor now. Um, so context is always important. Context is, especially when we're talking about phrasal verbs or, adding a word that may or may not be necessary, like up. Um, right, whenever you add a word, potentially you're adding more meaning, you're adding some context or some detail. Not always the case, but potentially because you're adding something to the sentence. um, so I hope that makes sense. Always be aware of the context. Sometimes you won't know because you say, okay, well, being and being, how is being becoming? Well, in this case, that's how we would interpret it. Sorry. um, it's a stupid little exception case, edge case, but that's what it is. So, but again, in your original context, unless you gave me more of a context there, like studying to become a particular thing or whatever, I don't know. But it's because it's studying and studying, and it sounds like we're not actually changing, studying to actually being something, um, with your original example. So, uh, another question: how are we supposed to pronounce "of course"? I hear natives say the F like a literal F, not schwa. Why is that? Okay. You're gonna have to clarify here. Because normally, so the full pronunciation of the word of is the schwa, which could even be the upside down V if it's really clearly enunciated, of, and with a V sound. It's spelled with an F, but it's one of the rare cases where it's actually spelled with an F and it's a V sound. Um, that's the full pronunciation of the word. Very commonly, we will drop that consonant sound, that V sound, this F spelling, and just say it with a schwa. Okay. Now, that's what's confusing me here because are you saying that you hear people change the V to an F sound? Because that's how I interpret literal F. But then you say not schwa. So they're saying like just an F sound and no schwa? Is that like it's just f, like of course, like that is um I get it now. Thank you. Perfect. So yeah, follow up on that. Specify a little more clearly. Are we dropping the schwa and changing the V to an F, or what's going on there? I'll come back to that question. Gabriel, can we take a minute to talk about the Gorilla Glue thing? Yeah, so of course, because I'm out of the loop and I don't pay a lot of attention to the news, I don't know a lot about it, but my roommate told me about it. So I am aware of the story. That's how I hear half the things my roommate tells me. um, and anyway, I know it is WTF, which for those of you who don't know, for the sake of educational purposes, WTF means what the fuck, like oh my god, like why, what just happened. Um, So WTF. Sometimes, interestingly, I actually noticed my roommate said this say this the other day because the F word is very strong, right? It's probably the strongest single word in the English language, and we use it everywhere. Some people like to avoid it, but because we have WTF as like a slang thing, or not a slang, a like a texting convention, um, some people will actually say WTF, like in their speech. Like they'll be like, and I was just like WTF, and it makes again, it's like a more family friendly way to avoid actually using the word itself. But very good use of that. Anyway, yeah, the Gorilla Glue girl. I mean, people are people do weird things. I was gonna say people are stupid, which is true, but we don't have to go there. We'll just say people do weird things. I don't know, whatever. I don't really have any comment on that. If you want to talk about it, we can, but I don't really have much to say about it. You're so kind. Oh, thank you. If you look up the All For You music video, I like that song. Um, as soon as I read that, I was like, Janet Jackson, yeah. And I was playing in my head. She sings Come On and Talk to Me 108, but it always sounds to me like Come On and Touch Me. Maybe. Any idea why I'm hearing it that way? Is it just my hearing, or is there something going on since the talk is immediately followed up by? There's also an unnecessary up, usually followed by or followed up by the aspirated T sound of two. Good question. Let's check it out. I want to also mention, really quick, very important for English learners to know. Again, I do recommend listening to music. It's one of the best things you can do in general to get exposure to the language, just not a good source of pronunciation necessarily. Keep that in mind. But even for native speakers, there are some phrases in some songs, not, any really weird pronounced rap songs like we saw earlier, um, but actual, like, they're singing normally, like you would expect from an average general American or Western American speaker. And just because of the music that's in the background or how quickly they're speaking or whatever, even for natives, there are some phrases sometimes that we just don't understand. We're just like, what is he saying? Or what is she saying? Or we might hear it slightly differently. Like our brains kind of actually make it into a different sentence or a different phrase. And it's only after we look up the lyrics that we're like, oh, this is what they're saying. So even for us in our own language, that does happen sometimes. Not all the time. It's not an everyday occurrence, but that can happen. In fact, there's a song from Green Day that I have listened to since high school. Not all the time, but I've listened to it since high school, and I was recently listening to it again after a while, a few years, and I finally understood this particular part of the this particular phrase in the song, and I was like, "Oh, that's what he's saying." So yeah, that can happen. But aside from that, as an English learner, odds are you're going to have an actual listening problem, and it won't just be because of the song. But especially if you have good listening, who knows? Let's see. It could be that it's actually the case where maybe a native speaker might not be able to. Um, so all for you, Janet Jackson 108. All for you, Janet Jackson. Hopefully don't. I'm gonna pick a non-music video here, just in case if it's different. Oh yeah, this is such a good song. Um, this is what, like an early 2000 song, pretty sure. Yeah, 2001. I remember listening to this as a kid. Um, 108. 108. We're in the 103. And what am I looking for again? Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's a good question. It's really unclear. It could go either way. It could be come on and touch me or come on and talk to me. Um, I would have to look at the lyrics to verify which one it is. Um, by default, it does sound a bit more like a CH to me, and I would probably say that it's touch. If if you didn't mention talk to, you just said, "Oh, does she say touch instead of or just touch?" You didn't say talk. I'd likely say yes. Let's see here. Lyrics, all for you, Jan Jackson. And also, guys, do not be afraid to use lyrics. Lyrics. So when I talk about subtitles, when you're watching like a TV show or something, you generally, unless you have a very special reason to use subtitles, there are uses for them. You generally want to avoid the subtitles because they're just going to take energy from your eyes and not really improve your listening all that much. Okay, that's a weird way to say it, but you know what I mean. You're practicing reading more than you're actually listening. So in with music, especially because I don't recommend music as a source of pronunciation. Even in a language that has a phonetic script, it's just not the best way to go, in my opinion. But lyrics can be extremely useful, right? Just for your listening. I used a lot of lyrics when back in my earlier days of trying to figure out how to teach myself Spanish. I was using lyrics all the time. In fact, I didn't use Link because I couldn't pay for it at the time. I didn't have the money. But why is this not loading? But I use Learning with Texts, which is the Link alternative, where you have the reading interface. You could click on a word, it brings up the dictionary, and you can all this stuff. Um, and I had a lot of Spanish songs that I was listening to, and I would just look up the lyrics, put it in Learning with Texts, go through and learn the words. And it was a little tedious. It's not the only way that you can do things, but there were a lot of words that I knew, but that I wasn't understanding in my listening. And it was after I read the lyrics, I was like, oh, I know that word. So lyrics are a super, super useful tool for learning in general, but especially with music. I would recommend you try to listen first and then go to the lyrics, but it doesn't matter as much. And okay, so what did she say here? It's all for you if you really want. That's not it. Where is this? Oh, it's in the background. It might not be in the lyrics. Let's see here. Yeah, it says talk to me. Come on, talk to me. Um, so there you go. The lyrics say talk to me. Occasionally lyrics are wrong. Occasionally lyrics are wrong. Usually not, but occasionally they are. I noticed that in Spanish when I was looking up lyrics before because I was like, that's not right. And I looked up a different source and I was like, okay, yeah, that's the correct one, not what the other site said. Um, but most likely it's talk. Um, so why does that happen? English is messy. Um, let's see. Come on, talk to me. Talk to. So going from talk to two, especially if we're speaking really quickly, like she's singing pretty fast in that line. Like, come on, talk to me, come on, talk to me, and especially because it's the preposition to, which we know is very susceptible. It can become a flap D under the right conditions. It's a crazy special case. Um, if we don't enunciate it clearly enough and we kind of just spit it out after that K, it could kind of become a little slurred or blended, and it comes out a little bit more like a CH sound. And then if you don't hear the T all that much because it's just a little sound at the end, talk to, you kind of hear that a little bit more. It's almost like a CH sound. Um, and so that's probably what you're hearing. It can happen, but it's a special case, especially it's because of the preposition to, I think. and the speed. But okay, blah, 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 blah. Okay, they changed it to F. I hear F. Okay, so okay, back to that question with of course. So oh, I think I know what you meant originally now. So because we usually drop the consonant, we just say the schwa sound. You're saying that instead of dropping the consonant and just saying the schwa sound, they're changing the V to an F. That's what's happening. So instead of saying of, they're saying of. It would be kind of like this, of course, like that. Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second. Let's see the original question. Okay, so how are we supposed to pronounce of course? So that was the question. How are we supposed to pronounce it? Okay. And why does this change happen? Okay. Why? Because it's English. That's always the easy answer, right? Because it's English. I apologize. uh, but let's see. Let me take a drink here. I want to finish my drink while it's still at least kind of cold today, unlike last time where I didn't even end up finishing the rest of it. Like it was probably down to there, and I didn't finish it because it was all warm and bleh. So okay, with as I said, the fully enunciated word. If you say it nice and clearly, slowly, or you're just you're for whatever reason you push it out clearly, it's going to be of. Okay, there's a V there. Now this is actually this change to an F can happen. Okay, and there's a couple reasons for it, and it's actually something not just with F. I've started to notice it with D's at the end of words, like the word sound. In fact, if you listen to my videos, I notice that I do this as I'm going back and editing my videos. And since I noticed myself doing it, I've actually started to notice other people around me doing it, and on TV and whatever. And I'll have to make a lesson about it at some point. But instead of sound, sometimes you'll hear me or other speakers say sound. Sound. It's not really quite like a T. It's not like sound, like we're saying a T sound. It's kind of like it's a D that has almost lost all of its voice, and it sounds more like a T. Like how does it sound? Sound. And I think the reason why I'm going to come back to of, don't worry. I think the reason, because this also explains of, I think the reason that happens, or part of the reason why it can happen, at least, is because it's at the end of the word. We're already dropping, okay? And especially after the end in this case, we don't tend to drop that D so much. If there's a connection, we might actually, or sorry, not drop. We don't tend to stop that D as much, like saying sound. It's a little harder to do, and we'll just say like sound, push out the D, or maybe drop it in a connection, like sound like the N and the L will kind of connect and the D will just disappear. Or the sound of. I like the sound of. We can connect the D or connect the N. Sound of, sound of. Anyway, but probably because it's at the end, the voice is dropping. Sometimes maybe we let the actual voice itself drop with the air, where we're just supposed to let kind of like it drop evenly, but maybe sometimes the voice drops a bit more or a bit faster than the air does. And by the time we get to the end of the word, we end up with more of a voiceless quality sound instead of a voiced, which would be more of a T. So, of course, I think that might be part of the reason why that can happen. It's not supposed to happen. Okay. If you're clearly enunciating, the word is not supposed to be pronounced "uf." That is not the word. Okay. But that's possibly part of it. In the case of course, there's another reason, which is probably a little more likely in this case. It's the same reason why have to also have is a V. It's not half, right? That's a different word. What's that word with an F? It's have. But in the special combination have and to, because this is a very common grouping, 9.9 times out of 10, changes in pronunciation in English go left to right with the flow of the sentence. On rare occasion, like with of course or have to, what can happen is the change actually goes backwards. Um, so, like I said, an S at the end, if the last sound, the previous consonant sound, vowels are a little bit different because all vowels are voiced anyway, but if the last consonant sound before the S is voiced, it's not guaranteed, but it's very likely that the S is going to be pronounced as a Z because Z is voiced. It just makes it easier to speak, right? Um, and if we're saying of course, I mean, we could do the same thing. We could say of course, but we don't do that. We're not going to change the K to a G or to a G. And instead of saying have do, something like that, we could do that, but we don't for some reason. In these cases, we actually go the other way and we let the voicelessness of course and the voicelessness of the T and to change of into uff and have into half. That's just the way it works in these special cases. Again, this is not normal. These are special exception cases. Um, but that is something I've noticed. I actually didn't notice it with of until you just mentioned it, and I was like, oh yeah, that works. But I noticed that with have to before. So again, it's not supposed to be that way, but it can come out that way in that particular combination. If it's the word of by itself, obviously, most likely it's going to be a schwa, just a schwa sound most of the time with no consonant, no F or V. But it's supposed to be a V sound. So if it's the word of and not the phrase of course, you're more than likely either going to hear just a schwa or with a V. Okay. Like almost like probably 99.9% of the time or 100% of the time if it's not that particular combination of and course. So hopefully that answers the question. And we're almost out of questions now. Steve asks about the Geet question. Okay, so yeah, now we're clarifying this. The song name is Gonna Dollars on My Head. Dollars on My Head. Official audio. Timestamp is 12 seconds. He's probably saying gettin', but I noticed he pronounce. Okay, good. So you changed pronounce to pronounce, but now it's he pronounces. We need that third person S or pronounced, maybe past tense. A lot of words weirdly. That's okay. Don't worry too much about the third person S. It's a mistake that's going to last you a long time. Unfortunately, I do have a way I think I can bypass it, but only through a special course that is for beginners. So don't worry too much about it. It'll take time, but yes. Okay, I've given up on English now. Yeah. JK, I love it. Thank you again. I was very confused. Yes, so no problem. There are a lot of very confusing things in English. So glad I could help there. But yeah, giving up on English, that might be the second best thing. So let's see, getting dollars on my head. Let's go check the song out really quick. So come over to what is now officially my song tab on YouTube, and we're gonna do oops, dollars on my head. Thank you, YouTube, for autofilling. Oh, I see. Featuring Young Thug. Official audio. Okay. And it was 12 seconds. Let's see here. I see. Okay, I'm just looking at it a couple more times. Yeah. This is a good beat. I like this one. Okay. So what he is saying there, you are correct. He's saying getting it. Getting it. Well, he says like I've been getting it. I've been getting like I'm not gonna match his pronunciation, but what he's really saying is like I have been getting it. Unless I'm mixing something up there, but I'm pretty sure that's what he's saying. That sounds pretty clear to me. Um, It's a different pronunciation than the way I speak, but I think it's pretty clear for a native. So with get, okay, as I said, the full pronunciation is get with a third vowel, get, get. Okay, so it'd be get. And there'd be a stop T there. I'm not going to worry about that detail because we're focused on the vowel. So get, okay. Now, normally 9 times out of 10, this reduces to get, get. Um, Sometimes, maybe if we're exaggerating, I guess, or like I said, like, sort of stereotypical Southerner geet, whatever, we might do that. Sometimes maybe we accidentally go a little too high and it kind of sounds a little bit more like an E, maybe. Usually not, it's get, okay. Now there's getting, okay, which fully enunciated, fully pronounced would be getting. Okay, so we still have that sort of that flap D. It's a little bit harder on the flap D because it's a little more enunciated, but it's still flap D getting. Okay, so it's like getting. Again, this is how I would speak. You can use the second vowel and the back end if you want, but I say in, getting. Now, of course, we can have the same type of reduction. Just because we're adding the ing doesn't mean that we can't say get instead of get. So very commonly, more often than not, we're actually going to say getting for the flap D, getting. Okay, so getting. Now, that's not quite what he's saying. That's close. Well, that is the word he's saying, but he's saying getting it. Okay, getting. This is a getting. Technically, you don't have to do a stop here, but most likely we will. This is a variation of the pronunciation, which sounds a little bit more informal, and but it's still pretty common. Where instead of doing a flapped D, we're actually going to do a stop T, a glottal stop T. Get in, and the in actually could sort of reduce to a syllabic N. Get in. It's kind of like mountain, get in. It's very similar. And then he's sort of doing a bit of a light stop. There's still a stop there, but it's kind of lighter. And that's probably because of the speed. Like I've been getting in, whatever. Okay. So that's what's going on there. So I do not hear him saying geet or geeting or anything like that. Yeah, it's definitely not E. I am hearing a very, very, very clear second vowel, I. Okay, getting. So that's that. Okay, yeah, and you say, I notice he pronounces a lot of words such as scare, said, and head. I think that's just for rhyming. Yes, that's another thing that can happen, especially in rap and hip hop, but also in some other genres, where you'll notice that it's not a normal thing we do. Like we don't just change the pronunciation of words to rhyme usually, but in some cases, maybe in some genres more than others, um, it is something that happens. Maybe here and there, just like a special case, Okay, and that will commonly happen if maybe there is like there's sort of maybe like a normal way to say it, and there's maybe a slightly more regional or variation way to say it. Like, um, for example, the word again in American English, some people will say this again. Some people, but that is primarily a British pronunciation. We don't really say again; we say again. Okay, it's just eh. It's not a reduction. It's just how we speak again. Um, But because again, it sounds like a perfectly fine pronunciation. It's just like not the American way to say it, for most speakers. Even if somebody doesn't normally use that, if they were singing a song, or if they were writing a song and they, maybe it just so happened to fit really, really well that, the previous word or the next word, that's going to be at the end of the line to rhyme, is like a, and so instead of saying again, they intentionally change it to again. That can happen. Um, So again, English is dynamic. Sometimes we'll pull a little bit from different accents or different dialects on occasion, but again, it's music. Music is sort of its own creature. It's still rooted in the language itself, but yeah, it's it has some of its own weird things to it. So unknown. I hope I didn't skip anything or miss anything that could happen. Um, but let's see. Unknown. I've been listening to a song recently. It has like 1,000 views, so it doesn't really have the exact lyrics on the net. Okay. So it's like a new song. Can you look up whether they're saying "I've got a battered hand" or "heart"? Well, you would think that those two would be very clear, but depending on how they're saying it, yeah, I mean, I can imagine maybe it might be a little hard to hear. Um, SodaStream topic out the beginning. The beginning, excellent timestamp. That's the perfect timestamp. um, okay, it was what SodaStream what? SodaStream topic. Okay, out. SodaStream out. Okay, got it. Let's see. So I've got a battered hand or battered heart. Let's see. Probably heart, but let's see. Just because that would make more sense from like general context of what somebody might say. Waiting for them to start singing here. Ah, okay. Okay. And I'll just double check to verify. I'm pretty sure I know what that is. Yeah. Yeah, he says hand. I've got a battered hand. No, I just sort of made that like a T hand. Hand. Anyway, I've got a battered hand. I'm hearing a bit of an accent from him. Um, they are Australian, by the way. Yeah. See, I didn't even see that comment, and I was like, I wouldn't have put them as Australian. I would have put them as British. But I mean, if they're Australian, again, music can kind of change sounds a bit. A lot of people who are British or Australian who sing. Well, I guess I don't know about Australian, but a lot of British singers who sing sound American. We were talking about that last week or the week before. And then Keith Urban, who's a country singer from Australia, when he sings, he sounds more or less like he's from the South, but when he talks, he sounds Australian. So yeah, definitely an accent there. Um, so wouldn't recommend for pronunciation, but uh, English listening is English listening. Um, I will say that if you are actively trying to improve your pronunciation and especially your ears, um, you don't have to, but ideally, for getting the most efficiency and possible speed of learning, you want to kind of try to focus more or less, like say 80 to 90% of your input sources on like one dialect, more or less. Um, again, that's just ideally. You don't have to. But of course, if you're just generally listening or whatever, then you can listen to whatever. It doesn't matter. Um, I'm not going to get into all the reasons why, but there are solid reasons for that. Anyway, yeah, you guys listen to some interesting music. um, Anybody here listen to country music? Because I listen to country music. Uh, I listen to all kinds of music, but country music is a big one. Can the F word be pronunciated? So to pronunciate is not a word. It seems like a word. It's a good try. You're following the conventions of how to put a word together. But it doesn't work. It's not a word. Yeah, so be pronounced, right? Again, so we still want pronounced. It's to be pronounced. Can the F word be pronounced? Thanks, no problem. Yeah. Although sometimes you will hear a native, again, for special effect to kind of sound funny, we might say pronunciated, just to intentionally sound funny. Like, it's not pronunciated that way, you fool. Just sounds funny. Um, Definitely not a normal thing. Okay, can the F word be pronounced as fuck informally? Okay, rule number one about the F word. The more informal you go, the more clearly and solidly you are going to say it the way it's supposed to be said. You're not going to change the sound. We tend to make changes to it, like saying the F word or fudge, frick, whatever else, WTF, in order to make it a little more family friendly, a little more not so harsh sounding, not so strong sounding, um, maybe more suitable for a slightly more formal situation. So no, Fock. Okay, there's two things about this. One is there are some dialects, some accents that just say it that way, and that's okay. But we're focused on American English. Um, so within American English, we don't say it that way. As far as I know, I don't think there are any American English dialects that say that, but maybe there are. General American, no. Western American, no. Um, if I actually have the perfect example, I'm going to play my ringtone. Why would you play your ringtone? This doesn't seem like it's relevant at all. Oh, trust me, it is. It is 100% relevant. And it's really funny. There's a reason I have this as my ringtone. Hopefully you guys can hear this if I can find where my ringtone is. What did I do? Where did I put that? I've only changed it once, so I don't know how my phone works. No, sound notification. Probably that's the right tab. Tab, more. Nope. And now I'm just wasting time. Ringtone is right there in front of me. Okay, so I'm going to play this. Turn my volume up. That's not my volume. Okay. Why is it not playing? How's my? Hold on. We're getting there. Technical difficulties again. Volume up. There it is. Okay, it was playing. So, oh my God, play. Why are you not playing now? Wait. I know I was being stupid. Oh my God. Okay, I have somewhere else I can play it from, I'm pretty sure. No. Download. No. Okay, anyway, if anybody has any other questions, I can also answer other questions. But with Fock, sometimes if we're really exaggerating to the point where if we're really exaggerating or really exasperated, it's possible. I really want to find this because it's so funny. It's possible that we'll open all the way, and that could hit either the unmerged ah in General American or the merged ah that I teach you guys in Western American. The point is it goes farther down for sure than the schwa sound. and we might say like fuck, fa, fa, and it can come out more as an ah. That is possible, but it's sort of like an extra strong way to push out the word. Usually you're going to be angry or just really like, oh my god, this is like so incredibly stupid. This is insane. It really sounds like a exasperated or angry way to say it. It's not the normal way to say it, but it has no effect on the informality. It's going to sound really informal either way. Um, anyway, so what my ringtone is supposed to be that I'm trying to show you guys is it's not funny if I explain it, but um, it's I guess it's from this thing, but I found it on a TikTok where actually my roommate found it on a TikTok where there's this girl. She's sitting in front of the TV. You see her, and she has like this Pikachu like onesie type thing where she has like it has like a little hood like a Pikachu hood, and she's holding like a big Pikachu stuffed animal, and it's her acting out a different audio, which I think is from something else, but you hear from the TV show Pokemon, right? Who's that Pokemon? Just like from the show. And then he says, it's Pikachu. And then they say, it's Clefairy. And then he says, fuck. That's my ringtone. So he wants it to like he's obsessed with Pikachu. That's the funny part. But anyway, yeah, me explaining it isn't as funny. Anyway, so in that case, he does actually say ah. He says more ah because he's just like really emphasizing and trying to sound really angry. So, um, speaking of these exclamations, forgot the S there. Typo, I'm sure. Speaking of these exclamations, can you do a comparison of when someone really stresses the word damn with a more diphthongized there that's a nice way of using English rules properly to form words that don't actually exist. I'm pretty sure it doesn't actually exist, but it's a perfect use of word formation. Very nice. Diphthongized version damn. Yeah, so um which by the way, damn, like so me saying damn, it feels kind of like but damn is like it doesn't sound anywhere near as strong or bad as the F word. It doesn't feel as visceral in my body. It's a pretty common word, so I can say that no problem. Over and over and over again. Now this, okay, you brought this up like a long time ago. So there are reasons why we might do that. This is kind of it's not a music thing, but it's kind of related to the same reason why we might manipulate things in music sometimes. It's usually for exaggeration. We're manipulating how the word sounds. So normally, if I just say like "damn," or "ah, damn, that sucks," or "damn, I missed it." Okay. Normally, most of the time, it's going to be "damn." That's the exclamation. That's the word. Okay. It's ah. That's it. If you say the other way, that is usually used more as like a like oh my god or like wow like surprise, especially something that seems like really crazy to you or just like it could have maybe some in like some context with like sexual connotations like somebody's really hot or whatever. There are a couple different places we can use it, but yeah, exactly, unknown. Yeah, damn girl. Yeah. You even got the U spelling instead of the I spelling. Very nice. um, but yeah, or just like I don't know, like you see, I don't know, I don't know. You see something crazy. You're driving and there's a car accident where there's like five cars that are just like crushed into each other, and you're like, damn, that's a crazy car accident, right? Whatever. And all we're really doing, the reason why that's happening is um, we're sort of lengthening and drawing out the sound. So instead of saying like damn, like that sounds very boring, Like there's no surprise there. You're just saying it really long. Like damn. Like why would you do that? In this particular case, probably because of the relationship between the fourth vowel and the nasal M. That's probably part of the reason in the background, but we tend to kind of shift it a little bit and give it an extra syllable, because then it sounds more shocking, more emphasized. I don't know why, but this is what we do. So, damn. Um, that's all it is. Um, so I hope that that's a sufficient enough comparison. I don't know if you want me to go side by side, like say them side by side, like both stressed, both really clear, or if that was sufficient. Um, I mean, it doesn't matter either way for me. But so I'll come back to that if you want me to continue with that. Unknown. Should I feel embarrassed about watching Kylo and learning words? Kylo, as in Kylo Ren. Um, that's the only Kylo I know. Or is that a TV show? Kylo. Oh, yeah. I had no idea that this existed. Um, I don't know. Let me see. Mhm. Okay. Um, yeah, no particular accent stands out to me. I thought it was common in the U.S. Never mind. It might be common in the U.S., but I'm a 31-year-old person, so and I don't have any kids. So definitely not on my radar. I don't sit around watching kids' TV shows, unless you count anime as kids' TV shows, in which case I watch lots of kids' TV shows. um, Not the ones actually made for little kids. Now, but should you feel embarrassed? No. If it is something that is interesting to you, because I mean, somebody might say, well, like, how could, like, why are you interested in a little kids show? Like, isn't that boring for you? If it's not boring for you, okay, it's not boring for you. These shows, I mean, they're made for children, but that's fine. Um, you know, the kids watch these shows, they observe the interactions, they learn words from them, they, probably not the pronunciation unless they're like, baby babies, and you just put them in front of the TV, which you probably shouldn't do if they're baby babies. um, Not that it's wrong, it's just you should spend time with your baby, not put them in front of the TV. But little kids watching TV, I mean, they're going to learn a lot of things from that. And in fact, I think it's not foolproof, and it's, there's other things you can do. But one of the things I recommend to students that I've had who have kids and they want their kids to learn English, right? But they want them to have like the benefit of like not having to go through school like they did and, still are learning English. They want them to, if not be native, to like actually have like a good solid base, because we know that, the baby brain, the really young child's brain, can absorb languages, um, very well. And so one of the things I recommend is, take your very young child and have them watch as much English TV as possible. Now, these days, usually we're like, oh, kids, they should go outside, get off the phones, stop watching TV and stuff. But it's like, no, if you want your child to learn a foreign language, I mean, obviously they should be active, they should be doing stuff, but like even if it's Japanese, like put them in front of a Japanese show and have them watch it for 3 to 4 hours a day. They're going to learn Japanese, even if it's just, being able to understand it. And obviously you can't just like stop it at some point. You have to, do that over several years, give them, just like they would in their native language. And it's not going to be perfect, but they're going to learn Japanese. They're probably even going to pick up the sound system and figure out how to say things because they're seeing in the cartoon, they're starting to, or show, whatever it is, they're starting to piece together, oh, this means this, and this means this, and this means this. So again, it's not necessarily the most efficient, it's not foolproof, but as an adult, you can take advantage of that too. It's just most people aren't really interested in watching kids shows. If you're interested and you have no problem with that, it's a Canadian one. Okay. I used to watch it subbed in my native language in my childhood. Okay, we'll see. There you go. Now don't watch it subbed and don't read lips. Don't read lips. Which here, obviously, it's harder to read lips because they're cartoons, right? um, Dubbed. Yeah, okay. Yeah, see, now if you would have watched it not subbed or dubbed, right, in your childhood, then that probably would have been better, a lot better. So anyway, whatever keeps your attention, that's the main point. You never feel embarrassed about it. You know, watch it by yourself if you feel weird about it. But if you're learning, no problem. Okay, moving on. The word goddamn it, is bad just because it has the word God in it. Does it have third wait, it? Yeah, because we already added does. That changes the verb. So we're not gonna make two changes and do does has. Because it would be it has. We have to change with the S. But if you add any other change like can have, will have, does have, okay, you only have one change. In general, there's a couple minor exceptions to that, but usually that's how English works most of the time. So try to think of it like that. But yeah, does it have any religious connotation? It does. It does. Now, most people don't care because most people are not particularly religious in the United States these days. There are a lot of religious people. I don't want to say like nobody's religious here, but I think more than half the country probably. I don't know statistics, but they have a religion. They're just like they don't care too much about things like that. Like really religious. It's like you shouldn't say use goddamn. And usually it's with it after it, like God damn it. Much more common instead of in isolation. But it's not bad just because it has the word God. Damn is a curse word, right? It's not pleasant. I mean, literally, if you think of damn, it's the original meaning and what it pretty much still means basically is damnation, hell, right? And it's really funny because I like how I had a philosophy teacher once. Well, I had several philosophy teachers, but one in particular, I like the way he described it because it was a world religions class, and it's so funny. He said, "So imagine you wake up in the middle of the night, right? And you're all tired, and it's dark, and you can't see well, and you're trying to, you have to go to the bathroom or whatever it is, and you're walking, and there's this, little end table in the hallway or something, and you accidentally stub your toe on the table leg, and instinctively, right, you say, ah, God damn it." Right. And he said, now think about that. What you're literally doing. You're saying, God, I know you're busy, but can you take 2 seconds to just damn this table to hell? That's sort of the literal meaning of when we use it. So it does have that background and it does have that religious connotation, but damn itself is a curse word. It's not particularly strong and it's very common. But you add the God to it, and because of historical cultural reasons, it does make it sound a little more bad or a little stronger. So yeah, but most people don't really care that much. Shun Shun, hello Shun Shun. Thank you for entering the chat a while ago. Sometimes I hear the word have being pronounced as, I'm going to say half, because I assume you're trying to do the AE combined IPA symbol, which should be the fourth vowel, which is the same as have. So half and or maybe not. Is it like ha? How do I even do that? Hafe. You hear hafe? Is it hafe? Because if you listen to my brother, you might. That's his funny way to say have. He has this funny accent that he does. It's like a mix of like Eastern European and Northern European and a little bit of Russian, I guess. I don't even know. It's like, but it's this funny thing where he says like, um, "Hey Maine, like the man, Maine, all the as from the A, right?" He's like, "Hey Maine, I don't hate the time, hate the time." He speaks really weird. Sometimes we do that in English. We'll make. It's not like we're trying to make fun of a particular accent. It's just we speak weird based off of stereotypical other accents, and we might blend them together. Um, it's something we do, especially if they're European based. We really draw heavily from European based accents. Um, or sometimes I ask him if he can do something, and he says, "Yes, mister," like Igor from Frankenstein. "Yes, mister." So he's really funny. But anyway, and I want to ask, how should I? So yeah, is that how you're hearing it? Are you hearing it like "hafe"? Like I don't know what A and E means, because I would assume you're trying to say the fourth vowel "a," but "have" already has the fourth vowel "a." Maybe the V changes to an F. That's a valid question. But then you say "and H a" with V, which is how it's normally pronounced. So I'm not sure exactly what your question is. Maybe um, there's some misunderstanding about how the word actually is pronounced, or I'm just misunderstanding your question based on the AE spelling. So if you can clarify that, I'll come back to you. And I want to ask, how should I pronounce the word love with the F sound or V sound? V sound. V sound. As I was talking about earlier, potentially there's a very small chance that it could come out as an F. It's not supposed to be an F. Usually it's not going to be an F. Um, love, love. I love that. Love that. Or I don't know. He loves going there. Loves. He loves going there. Okay. Even that S is changing to a Z because of the voice of the V. So 99.9% of the time, for sure, it's definitely going to be a V. Um, okay, I'm just curious if you perceive damn as being more like a fourth vowel. It's a good question. I was wondering if you were going to ask that. I was going to comment on that, and I was like, eh. um, fourth vowel plus yam, or a plus am. Yeah, so a little bit of both. A little bit of both. So this exaggerated form of this is how you spell. I wouldn't necessarily spell it that way, but it's a good spelling. This exaggerated form of damn, like damn. Okay, the way that I perceive that, it's I could potentially say that the first part is day with the a diphthong, or de with just the third vowel. Okay, day or de. It doesn't matter because that y sound comes in, and you could see if it's third vowel and we go from to y, day, day. It sounds going to sound very, very similar. So I would perceive it either way. Like both ways make perfect sense to me. Then there's the y, and this is a connecting y. This is a small y sound between the a or and the that we're creating out of the second syllable. So I don't have a way to write that in the chat here, so I'm just going to put the y as I don't know, a y in parentheses, because we need something here. Okay, and then okay. So yeah, that would be it. So I would definitely describe it as there's a little y connecting, and the first part is variable. But notice I don't perceive the first part as right? I wouldn't say it's damn. Like that's how I would have to, like damn. And it could potentially be said that way, but I don't. That's not the way that I usually hear it. That we don't actually open all the way up enough to say like "damn." Like it's usually that actually sounds kind of like maybe in like hip hop culture type pronunciation a little bit, but like damn, damn, damn. Like it's more of an eh. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter really. Okay. I love the Powerpuff Girls, and I actually find it really helpful for learning English. I suppose, yeah, the Powerpuff Girls were one of the big cartoons. Well, one of the new wave cartoons that came on when I was. I don't remember how old I was when it came out. I think I was 9 or something. But anyway, I it was on. I watched a lot of Cartoon Network, so I've seen a lot of Powerpuff Girls. Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Lab, the cartoons. That was like the new wave of cartoons back in the day. Ed, and Eddie is a really, really funny one. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a cartoon, doesn't matter what it is. As long as you enjoy it. Again, be wary of if there's any sort of weird accent thing or going on or whatever. Usually, there's not going to be because things are based more usually around like General American to Western American. Sometimes a particular character has an accent, like Fuzzy Lumpkins, right? He has the overall suspenders, right? And he's supposed to be like this stereotypical like from the country, right? And so he has this sort of accent where he talks like this. I don't remember exactly the type of accent he has, but it's supposed to be more of like a southern accent. Um, because he's supposed to be what we would call like a country bumpkin, like a backwards, uneducated, stereotypical southerner, which is again not a fair stereotype. Um, but it's the traditional stereotype we have when we think of someone from the South or whatever, even though it's totally wrong. And then of course Mojo Jojo, he just speaks weird because it's part of his character. He's like, "I Mojo Jojo shall take over the world," or whatever it is. So it's very dramatic and whatever. But I'm sure you're aware of that. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Trying to, yeah, so I'm trying to not read lips, but it's been hard since then, not gonna lie. Yeah, it is what it is. Again, that's why if you watch cartoons, I mean, ideally we kind of try to match the mouth more or less to the sounds, but it's a lot harder to do in animation. Even like in anime where it's a little bit more like real life type style compared to like regular Western cartoons. Um, it just doesn't really match all that well. And of course, the mouth movements in anime are supposed to match Japanese, not English, so that doesn't help. So watching cartoons can actually help you a lot because you can't really rely on the lip reading. Um, so yeah, and for anybody who is like, why are we talking about reading lips? Unknown has this I don't want to call it a problem, but this issue where she's gotten really good at reading lips when watching English or whatever, and that can happen. Like, I mean, usually people read the subtitles, but you could also learn to read the lips, and it's the same exact problem. You're using your eyes to um, basically help your brain interpret what's going on, where you're not relying on your ears as much. And so you really need to develop your listening by relying on your ears and not on your eyes. Um, so yeah, it just takes practice. No big deal. Okay, what are you? Wait, what? Oh yeah, okay. What are you? Can the just disappear in the pronunciation? Yeah. Yes and no. Yes and no. The seemingly simplest of questions can have some of the most complicated of answers. Um, so first, so we're all on the same page. If we clearly enunciate this, because even if it's a contraction, so there's still a clear enunciation for it. We're not going to uncontract and say what are as a fully enunciated form. That's a common mistake English learners make. If it's contracted, it's contracted. Okay. Now you can uncontract for various reasons. That's a different topic. But this is going to be "wha," and then we're going to flap the D, and the RE is going to become "er." So it's like ER instead of RE. and we're going to flap the D and connect it, just like butter. Okay, water, water. And then we go to you. What are you? What are you? Or what are ya? If you say you is ya, reduce it. So can the RE, can the part just disappear? So even in fast speech, it's very, very common to still keep that Okay, it's part of how we speak. What are you? What are you doing? What are you doing? However, it's especially if it's really fast speech or if we're speaking lazily, it's also extremely common to not say the and instead to replace it with a schwa, a very, very quick, small schwa sound. What are you? What are you doing? What do you want? What do you want? Actually, no, that's what do you want? Yeah, and that's interesting because what do you and what are you can be pronounced exactly the same with just a schwa in between. What are you? Okay. And then we'll know what it is based on the actual verb. If we say, what are you doing? It's ing. What are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, so we know it's are. If we say, what do you want? There's no ing. And so it's do. It's a little trick we have. But so potentially it could become a schwa. Can it completely disappear? Okay, if it's a statement, then the word order is going to follow the statement, right? So if I say, is that what you are doing? Then it's not even going to be water, okay? That's a common mistake English learners make as well. But if it's a question, like if I say, what are you doing, right? If you drop the and you also don't make it a schwa, you just completely drop it, it's going to sound a lot more informal, okay? A lot more informal. And it's very, very likely that now that or is gone, now we have a t and a y next to each other. And it's also the word you specifically, which makes it even more likely, that we're going to blend the t and the n to ch, and we're going to get what you doing. And instead of oo, right, the you can still reduce to ya, so we can say chu or cha because you could come out as you, it could come out as ya. Both are perfectly fine. Neither is informal. They're just two variations. Okay. So what you doing? What you doing? Or what you doing? What you? Most likely it's going to be a schwa, but it can still come out as ooh. It's not a problem. What you doing? What you doing? Okay. What you looking at? What you looking at? Right. So again, it sounds more informal. Sounds a lot more informal, but it is possible. Yes. If you don't completely drop it and just reduce her to it I, well, it doesn't sound super informal. It's pretty normal. It's a common thing we do, but I think it probably does sound a little bit more informal than normal. But it doesn't sound nearly as informal as completely dropping it and blending the t and the y. Again, only in the question form. If it's a statement, the word order changes, and we don't get that combination. Okay. Unknown sent some messages here that I have to show. Okay. Where did those go? Oh, would you say shoot the shit? That's a phrase we have, or shoot the breeze. They're both the same. What me personally, I would probably say the second one. So I curse quite a lot, but up until the age of like 20-ish or so, I really didn't curse that much. I was kind of like a good boy, mama's boy, and I really didn't like how curse words like felt or how they sounded, and um, I generally avoided them. But life experience happens, and I curse a lot more. I mean, I don't curse every other word like some people, but I curse a lot more than I used to. But probably because of that, I don't know. I probably have a tendency to say shoot the breeze instead. But actually, in my personal vernacular, in my vocabulary that I use, I probably wouldn't use either of those. Um, I'd probably use a completely different expression. It would depend on the exact context, but yeah, those are two perfectly fine phrases. That doesn't matter. Do, 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 do. Okay, since it is already informal, might as well just say shit. Well, not necessarily, right? The thing about curse words, and this is probably true in your language, anybody's language. Just because something is informal, right? When you use a curse word, obviously curse words will automatically bring the formality way down. Um, and it depends on how strong they feel, of course. Some aren't as strong as others, but um, just because something is informal doesn't necessarily mean that, like, oh, I might as well just, like, just make it even more informal, right? Like really just make it sound blah, you know. Um, it depends, you know. As a general rule, English does have formality. This is something else I want to talk about on the channel in the future. Compared to many other languages, English is not particularly formal, especially American English, compared to British English. It is not particularly formal. We do have times when we use formality and this and that, whatever, and we have certain phrases that maybe sound a little more polite or whatever. And there's standards, there's things you need to know. But even in a work environment, many times, just like the fact that we only have one word for you. I mean, there's y'all, but not everybody uses that, and that's more informal. But we say you general, like the general you, which is a different use of you. I refer to a group, hey, probably you guys or y'all, but you know, there's you. It doesn't change the verb form or the preposition or the pronoun like in other languages. Um, so anyway, for various reasons, um, American English is already generally on a pretty relatively informal level, just standard. um, and when you add the curse words or the swear words, however you want to call them, the profanity, it can really, really change the entire tone of it to where, like, some people don't like to hear those words. And they'll actually be offended or they'll feel uncomfortable if you use certain words. And I mean that's technically more their problem, but it's something you have to be aware of. Like, um, say you're with a friend and their friend, and you don't know their friend very well, but you have a mutual friend, and you start throwing out curse words. Maybe that maybe with your friend it's like your friend doesn't mind, but then that person does, and now you just made the whole situation uncomfortable because you're using curse words left and right or whatever. So it's something to be mindful of. You don't want to just throw it in because it's informal. But and yes, good correction, might. um, Despondency, which I believe was forlornness. um, Hello. What's up? How's it going? Yes, very nice. Took me a second to get here, sorry. Oh, we're already at 2.5 hours. Jeez, time flies. Shadowing is tough as hell, though. Getting all fed up with it, especially how slow it goes. Thanks for the release of minimal pair. No problem. Got to be useful for some people. Avers would be nice too. Avers is that? Wait, I think that's the next one. Yeah, that's right. Because I did and at should be the next one. I already have it recorded. Yeah, I have it recorded. I just haven't edited it and pushed it out. I want to hit one of the major lessons in the pronunciation course, like the chit jit sound or whatever, by the end of this week. But definitely next week for sure. The next minimal pair extra practice lesson I have in the queue is verse cat, cut, sam, sum, ran, run, etc., etc. So that is definitely coming very soon. Um, and yes, shadowing can be tough. I would like to know specifically what you are doing and how you are doing it and how much time you're spending, um, because it can be very tough. And depending on the person, it might not be the most enjoyable activity to do, especially if you're doing it very thoroughly. It can actually, take a lot of energy and focus. But in my experience, unless somebody just really doesn't care about a particular thing like pronunciation, or they just really hate a particular activity, oftentimes with a little bit of creativity, you can find different ways that are either as effective or maybe not quite as effective to do the same thing. But because this other way is a little more enjoyable, or it doesn't take as much energy or time necessarily, um, it's not going to be the most efficient, and it might take you a little bit longer overall. But because it's more enjoyable, you're going to want to keep coming back to it instead of being like, oh, I give up, like I'm getting fed up with it. So, um, and we can maybe try to talk about that a bit. I mean, I know you're not on Patreon. 'Cause I'm pretty sure you're not on Patreon. So I mean, we'd have to do that through here, and maybe everybody can learn from it. But if you have any specific questions about, oh, how should I do this or that, I think we talked about a bit about that before too. But um, just because I have my ideal way that I think is most efficient and that I recommend, that's not necessarily the best way for everybody to do it, because not everybody's going to have the time to do it that way. Not everybody's going to have the energy to do it that way. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't shadow at all, because yes, there are really bad ways to shadow where you just kind of repeat what you hear without really trying to match it, and you just do it once and move on. It's not really shadowing. Um, but there's more than one way to do it, right? And still get a lot of benefit, even if it's not the best way to shadow. So I would encourage you to maybe experiment with some other stuff. Shadowing is like a big chore to me. So hard to get 1 to 2 hours on a regular basis. Okay, I would say that's probably your first problem. Now, if you can do 1 to 2 hours, heck, if you could just do 1 hour on a regular basis and it's enjoyable to you, fantastic. If you're doing 1 hour or more and it's something that is a chore, that's the first thing I would change. Don't do an hour. Don't do, because that's not even necessary. That can help really accelerate your learning, um, but it's definitely not necessary in any way. Uh, what's much more necessary, I've seen people get really, really good results with focusing on just like 1 or 2 sentences really deeply, say 20 to 30 minutes a day, but getting regular feedback from a native speaker. Um, that can take you much farther than an hour a day if you're hating the hour a day. Okay. Um, I'm trying to grind. I know other people have other comments. I'm gonna come back in a second here, but I'm trying to grind to speed up the process. Yeah, that's not a good sign. Um, you're hella correct about it. Yeah. Uh, I think some things in life, and some things in skill acquisition, depending on how you're going about things, and especially at this physical, mechanical, foundational level of pronunciation in your training. Um, Sometimes a bit of a grind is useful. There's nothing wrong with it. In general, brute force methods for most things, most of the time, are not going to be very, we'll say, conducive to learning. You might get a lot of benefit from them, but they're going to be very tedious, very boring. You're not going to want to do them. You're not going to want to show up every day. Maybe if you do it every once in a while, or it's a very specific thing, like to learn the hiragana in Japanese, which I probably mentioned this before, but I sat there. There's I think, what is it, 48 characters in the hiragana alphabet. Should be about that, about 48 or so. I might be confusing that with something, but yeah. And what I did is I wrote every single character 50 times. 50 times. So I started with a, which was the very first one in the chart, right? And I did that 50 times. 50 times. Over and over. I had pages full of just repeated hiragana. Okay. And that's not required, but I didn't really know how to learn a language at the time. This was before I, really learned a lot of the things that are useful. But when it comes to certain tasks, like learning a new script, uh, sometimes that could be the most efficient way to just kind of get it over with. And I still remember to this day, with hardly ever reading hiragana, hardly ever writing hiragana, like almost never, um, I can still, like, if you ask me right now, hey, write this word, like, you write it in English and I try to translate it into hiragana, I could probably do that more or less like that. There might be some characters that are kind of fuzzy in my brain, but, and I did that. So this is 2021, 2000. I did that in 2007. Yeah, because I graduated 2007. I had my Japanese first semester Japanese in the fall of 2007. Um, so that was a while ago. It's like 15 years ago almost. Um, but it's not the best for everything. Um, at the end of the day, regardless of how effective or efficient something is, if you don't want to do it, it's not the best method for you. Right? That's something that a lot of people don't understand. They say, "Oh, well, according to science and how the brain works, this is the best and this and that, whatever." And we need to keep those things in mind, obviously. But if at the end of the day you're not going to show up, it doesn't matter how efficient it is for your brain. You're not going to put the time in. Um, okay, they say, yeah, hiragana. I was going to hiragana. Hiragana and katakana are annoying, a little but doable. I did the same. I was grinding it, just like the Korean alphabet, so I could remember. Yeah, when I was looking at Korean a little bit, I didn't quite jump into Korean. I was contemplating. I do want to learn Korean in the future, but I was looking at their system, and I kind of started to do a little bit of that, but I was more exploring it. But if I ever do learn Korean, I'm probably going to do the same process for their script. Um, now I think a script, I don't know a lot about Arabic, but my very, very little tiny bit of knowledge of the Arabic script, I think it kind of functions a little differently. It's not as conducive to that sort of massive repetition. I don't know. I don't know quite enough about it. I think it's a little more free flowing depending on what you're going to write. So it may not work for every script, but like if you're learning how to write, Latin based letters, you're an English beginner or whatever, you could apply the same thing. A. And that's what we did as kids, right? They gave us these papers with like lines and we had to write capital A, capital A, capital A, So it's kind of how you learn how to write. Josh had American. Okay, so before, like I do get around to do stuff, but yet I'm not going full on or enjoying it much. But things are crucial to me. Yeah. So as I said, mix it up, explore different alternatives. Look at. I think last time I might have mentioned some of the. Yeah, it was last time. I don't know if you were here. I don't remember who was here or who I was talking to, but I mentioned some of the other polyglots. Actually, I think I was talking to you. Some of the polyglots who, they have their particular ways that they shadow or do this or that or whatever, and some of it's more intensive, some of it's less intensive, some of it, has extra steps. Like Professor Argelis likes to walk back and forth with upright posture as he, repeats a dialogue, and there's all kinds of different ways to do it. Maybe back off on the intensity, or if nothing else, reduce your time. Drop down temporarily to say like 10 minutes. If you can work with, say, one or two sentences over a period of 10 minutes, like 5 minutes each, that is way more than sufficient. It's not going to be the fastest necessarily, but it's way more than sufficient. You need to be making sure, on the other hand, that you're getting feedback from somebody, which I'm pretty sure you are, but make sure that you're getting the feedback. The frequency of feedback is going to be much more important in general than the actual time that you put in, because if you're just repeating the same thing over and over and over again, but you're not doing it correctly, you're kind of just reinforcing the wrong pronunciation. So that doesn't mean you should be afraid and that you should not try at all, but you need to be getting, you know, at least semi-regular feedback, and don't try to work with a billion different sentences. Try to focus on a handful of sentences, preferably that target sounds that maybe you have some trouble with. Okay, so now things are getting kind of crazy. I want to make sure I go back a little bit and get some of these other questions. So, Steve, is it true that are and is can be dropped? I am going to do it. So you, so with I am, you didn't, oh, I see. So you're keeping the M, like I am going to do it. I am going to do it. Which most likely we'd contract I'm going to do it. We definitely wouldn't say I gonna. So yeah, with I, we wouldn't drop the to be part. You gonna do it? She gonna do it? Yes, it's possible. It sounds more informal. Sounds quite informal. Not the most informal thing in the world, but it does sound a lot more informal than normal. Um, and again, let's see. Hold on. Okay, in a question only. In a question only, not as a statement. Okay, if I say she gonna do it tomorrow, that sounds very uneducated. It does not sound good. There are some people who speak that way, but again, that probably comes more in like the rap hip hop type background. Maybe in the southern pronunciation in some areas, I don't know, but that's not going to sound good to general American, Western American speakers. So if it's a question, so we're not dropping are and is as in you are gonna and she is gonna, but we're dropping it at the beginning, saying, are you gonna do it? Or is she gonna do it? Yes. It sounds more informal, but we do that very frequently. Very, very frequently. It's perfectly normal, perfectly common. Um, there's actually other things that work like that too. Like let's see. I don't think of an example with do. Or with have, the present perfect. Let's say, I don't know, we're trying to find a movie to watch. I have all these movies, and I don't know, I grab one, I show it to you, I say, you seen this one? You seen this one? Again, in a question form, not in a statement form. So it's, have you seen this one? I'm dropping have. You seen this one? Okay. We can generally do that with, not in all cases with all combinations, like I am. We're not going to say, like, am I going to do it? Like, I going to do it? Like, we just don't say that because probably because we're asking ourselves and that just doesn't happen as frequently anyway. So it doesn't work all the time, but in general, with to be at the start of a question, with the perfect tenses, present perfect specifically, we'll say present perfect, the have at the start of a question, not normal have, but present perfect have, and do or does at the start of a question. Like instead of saying, do you like it? I can say, you like it? You like it? No, do. Okay. But again, only in question form. Only in question form. That is something that we do all the time. It's very, very common, but it does sound a little more informal. I have to go to the bathroom. I'm going to be right back. Okay. Now, once again, I have to take off my Okay. Where was I? Ah, yes. Okay, and then Steve also says, wait, he is bad, so he bad. We are studying, we studying. Um, okay, and in cases like that, where again it's more of a statement, like if he bad or we studying, that again sounds like it's from sort of more like the rap, hip hop. Um, some people speak that way, and it's fine. That's how they speak. But for general American, for Western American, the average speaker, it's going to sound uneducated. So, um, and super, super informal. So I would not recommend it, but it's your choice. Definitely not normal. They're the standard normal in most of the country. I don't think I'm alone. Who used to confuse? Oh yeah, so this one I kind of skipped over this one. And we would probably say I don't think I'm the only one uh, who used to confuse. I don't think I'm alone. Who it's a little bit awkward in the grammar, but yeah, Um, more often, it definitely and like that's almost always a problem. Well, I don't want to say almost always, but it's a very frequent problem for a lot of learners in my experience. Ah between and is less frequent, and between and is less frequent, but it does happen. And just because it's less common, it doesn't mean you're you're not as smart or something like that or whatever. It's just okay, your native language or your ears, your personal ears, whatever. They're having issues with these combinations. Um, so yeah, that's why until I think it was Liang Shu, which I'm probably saying his name horribly, but um, he's been leaving a lot of comments on these types of lessons, and um, he asked me to do like the or the a versus and the a versus um, and it was sort of in my general plan, but it wasn't something I was going to get to. But he asked for it, and so I was like, okay, well, maybe other people want it too. So I figured I'd make it, and since I'm making those types of lessons now, but anyway, unknown says that I really enjoyed. I really started to enjoy shadowing. Awesome, coming to terms with it at least. Good, very very good. Um, yeah, it can be really awkward and weird at first, but the more you practice it, the more you kind of get into the groove of it, it becomes normal, and you're just like, oh yeah, I'm playing with sounds, and and you can really get into it. Where you're just like, is this you start feeling your tongue, and you're like, oh, if I make this little change here, and you forget about like feeling weird or stupid. You're just like so into it. So yeah, I have been working with the so Meadowzaki. I don't think you have commented before. Maybe you have. But thank you for commenting. I know it's been a while. Sorry, it took me a second. But and then Meadow has a couple other things. So Meadow, wow, I'm actually getting behind now. I have been working with the word better for a long time. It is still not pronounced perfectly. Do you? Is a typo. Do you have any tips on that? Punctuation also helps too. A period after perfectly. um, but so tips to improve better. The problem with better, it's not necessarily the word better itself. It's the same with water and I don't know, better, batter, uh, sadder, fatter, matter. Okay, it's the same type of problem. What we're doing, so as I mentioned earlier, there's two T's. In American English, those two T's, if you see two of the same consonant repeated in the same word, especially in the middle of a word, it does not affect the pronunciation. It's a common spelling convention that many words have, not all words, that especially for the stop sounds, t, d, p, b, k, g, although with k, it's usually ck instead of kk. Um, you'll commonly see two of the same one. But in American English, we have inside these words, we have the conditions for the flapped D, okay? Because it's at the start of an unstressed syllable, and there are two vowel sounds around it, in this case, and Now, in addition to that, normally we tap, right? Da, da, da. Okay, it's like if your language has sort of a single tap R instead of if it has da, then it's very, very similar to that. But this is a little bit special because we're going to have to tap and pull into the English So you have to make sure first that you can do a good English If you can't do a good English you have to improve that first, okay? Because there's no point trying to tap and pull into a position that you can't get into. So good then you're going to want to practice the flap D, not in this combination. So for example, if we say, so this can happen inside a word or between words. So if I say, I don't know, I can't think of anything right now. Hit it. Okay. The T in American English, when the T connects to a vowel between two words, it also becomes a flap D. So we don't say hit it. We could if we're very clearly enunciating. It's very unlikely, but we could. We're most likely going to flap the D and say hit it, hit it, hit it. And then the second T would probably be a stop. Hit it, hit it, hit it. So you want to practice flapping, not in isolation, because we never do the flap D in isolation. Even me as a native, it's really hard to just say like da, da, da. I'm actually doing more of a Spanish, or trying to do more of a Spanish tap R because that's the closest thing that I know how to do. But notice I said know how to, okay, how to do. The second D in do is a little bit more connected, but how to, okay. So you want to play around, make sure that you can sort of flap that D sound, spelled with a T, but it's a flap D. We don't have a flapped T as a T sound. And once you can do that, then you want to practice putting them together. Okay. And you're going to make a little change going to instead of the regular flap, which is more or less around where the T or D normally touch at the top of the mouth. This is your teeth, top of your mouth. There's this part that goes up and back. You're going to get really close to that part there where it starts to go up, and you're going to sort of tap and pull there instead. So it's a little bit farther back. It's a little tricky. It's a very difficult combination for many English learners. But if you play around with it and you can do the two parts individually, it becomes a lot easier to start trying to put them together. And it just takes practice. It might take you a lot of practice. Okay. Some sounds or some combinations in any language for any learner, or for whatever learner, they just take a while. Like me to start rolling my R's in Spanish to say R, it took me 6 months to start to roll my R's. Not to be able to do them perfectly, because I still can't do them perfectly, but to start to roll my R's. And then I just never perfected it. But it took me 6 months. 6 months. I couldn't figure out how to get my tongue to do that little wavy motion. And I kept practicing, I kept making little changes. Okay, you have to do micro adjustments, make little changes. If this doesn't work, did it get closer or farther away? If it got farther away, go back, make a different change. If you got closer, try to make another change in the same direction or same, tense change of your tongue, whatever it is. And if it sounds better, keep going that way. If it sounds worse again, well, that wasn't the right change. So you need to go back a little bit and try a different type of change. So, in essence, just play with it. Play with it in your mouth. Okay, blah, 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 blah. I already talked about all this, I think. Okay, so now I caught up where I was. So despondency also says, yeah, I find myself that way with a lot of things. Even though I need it desperately, I do hate it and more likely to be reluctant to do it, or it's supposed to be it to do it, but I still get around to that. But again, it's still odd. Yeah, sometimes we have just like a bigger problem where it's kind of like, I think we talked about this last week, like getting kind of just burnt out in general. And so you kind of want to pace yourself. Uh, I struggled with that a bit too. It's like doing some of the activities that I wanted to do. I kind of like I don't want to do this right now. Um, Even though I know they were really useful, and it's like once you get into them, it's like oh yeah, you enjoy them and stuff. But like the thought of like doing it, you're like I don't know, I don't know. So sometimes you kind of just have to get into it. But there's all kinds of factors. Just make sure that you're balancing out. You're not burning yourself out, and you know experimenting with things, changing things up. Uh, if needed to maybe make it more interesting again. Um, Josh, how do Americans pronounce these car makes? Well, the way I would pronounce them, I've never seen two of them, so we'll see. Renault, Puget, I guess. There's a couple different ways I would try to pronounce that. That's probably the most likely. Puget, maybe Puget. Volvo. So Puget, I've never heard of. Volvo. Um, this is another one I've never heard of. So obviously there's an S, so I might say Skoda, but because there's a strange little symbol and I have no idea how that affects the pronunciation, my natural inclination is to try to change it into an SH, which is probably wrong, and say Skoda. And then that last one actually has a couple pronunciations in American English. Most people, I think, say Hyundai, so we'll just completely ignore the Y. I'm pretty sure it's a Korean car company, and it's supposed to be pronounced more like Hyundai. Um, I don't think anybody in American English says it that way, but Hyundai, some people say Hyundai, so they actually changed the I to A. Um, the way I always naturally said it, the way that I heard it growing up was mostly Hyundai. Yeah, Hyundai. So there you go. Renault, Puget, Volvo, Skoda, Hyundai. Okay. Um, like I do get around to do stuff, but yet I'm not going. Oh yeah, I already read that one. I guess I missed one of your comments before. Thanks for giving me general tips. I appreciate it. Consultation with Jonathan. Yeah, I know, right? There you go. That's why I'm here. Of course, it's not perfect. It's just through chat, but gets the job done. I hope. Maybe eventually. David, y'all complaining about hair. 2,500 kanji is literally the inferno mode. I know. I know. I'm very well aware of that. Thank you very much. Anybody who has even thought about learning Japanese at some point probably saw those characters and was like, I don't know. And then they learned they had to learn at least 2,500 of them for daily use. And they're like, I really don't know. So, yeah, I did the same process with katakana. Katakana. See, you can hear my accent there. I'm flapping the T. Kata. Definitely not the Japanese way to say it, but katakana. I'm also doing a schwa at the end. Uh, so I wrote each character 50 times. However, I didn't do it as fully as I did with hiragana because after I learned hiragana, right, it was the start of the semester. I had all this energy. I was like, yeah, Japanese. This is like my first actual real Japanese class. I'm finally gonna learn Japanese because I had no idea what I was doing and didn't know that that wouldn't work very well. But I was super excited, and by the time I finished writing all the hiragana 50 times, we started learning the katakana, right? Because it's the other basic writing system. And I was like, okay. So I think I got through like a quarter of the chart and I was just like, I don't have the energy for this anymore. So I tried to write them at least like, 15, 20 times each, but I didn't put as much effort into it. I kind of would say I half-assed it part way, and I don't remember the katakana as well, especially the ones with the little line, because there's like one like this with nothing. There's one like this with one line. There's one like this with two lines. There's one that goes the other way with two lines, and they're so similar. It's like I think one is so, one is tsu, one is she. and then I think one is either n or no. I don't remember, but anyway, it's really hard to remember because they're so similar, and I didn't put in the time to actually drill it, so whatever. But yeah, the kanji is a lot harder. Now there are smart ways to learn kanji, but there's easier ways to learn kanji, but there's no easy way to learn kanji. I don't think. Some people found like Heisig's method say, "Oh, it's so easy," but all the things that I've tried have not been easy. Um, they've just been maybe easier than brute force. So kanji makes sense, but the only way to learn it is to cram, I guess. Um, I wouldn't say it's the only way. There's a site, I forgot what it is. I can't remember it right now because I haven't used it in so long. But there's this site where it's based off of Heisig's method. I want to say like Wotaku or something, or maybe that's something completely different. I don't know. Um, I don't know. There's something in my brain. But anyway, it focuses on first learning how to like read the radicals and read certain combinations and like putting them together logically before you actually learn how to write them. So you're like learning how to read before you learn how to write. And I think for something as complex as kanji, where you just have so many characters, like the Latin alphabet is relatively easy. You have a set number of characters and you just combine them in words. Sometimes things aren't spelled the way that they sound. Okay, but kanji is you have at least 2,500 that you have to be able to read, if not write. Um, and so just by that, it makes it more complicated. Um, I think the best way to do that is, well, relatively the best way, but probably the easiest way is learn how to read the pieces and how they fit together and using mnemonics and memory hacks so that you can understand. And you don't have to like completely separate it. Like you can incorporate the writing partway through the reading process. But when you go that way, I think it makes the task a lot easier to do. And then the writing is really just remembering the stroke order because you already remember the kanji and you know how to read it. Well, you won't completely remember the kanji, but you'll know how to read it and what it means. And so once you can attach uh, the meaning to what the sound or what the symbol is supposed to be saying, which of course that varies by context, but you get the idea. That's a lot easier than trying to remember how to read it, how to write it, remember all the stroke order, remembering all possible readings. There's the onyomi and the kunyomi readings and all this stuff. Like it's too much. Like that's why it's a nightmare for most people because they try to do all of those at once. That's the traditional class method way where they throw all this at you, and it's almost impossible. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Um, so when I go back to Japanese at some point, I'm going to be using more of those methods. But okay, Merozaki, why working with an accent coach is okay? So why is this is the question, right? Why is working with an accent coach? Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. So if you say why working with an accent coach is the most effective way, uh, that is a statement word order. This is a common problem for English learners. So if I say that, wait, hold on. Yeah. So that is why working with an accent coach is the most effective way. Okay, we're connecting these two ideas. Where if it's a question, you want to ask why is working with an accent coach the most effective way? Okay. I know it's a subtle thing and it seems weird, but that would be the proper grammar. Um, to get an amazing accent, and what if you don't have one? Well, working with an accent coach, they're number one, just working with a native, they can hear things that you probably aren't hearing yet, right? Because your ears haven't been trained. Your baby brain pruned away certain connections. Some people, like my brain, apparently didn't do that very well because I have really good listening. So everybody's a little bit different, right? But the average person, your brain prunes away the connections needed to hear sounds in different languages, where you're born with the ability to hear all the sounds, like most people. Um, and part of the process of brain development early on is it gets rid of some of those connections because it's not needed anymore. You now have a language that you're a native language that you're growing up into. So evolutionarily in the past, that's just what the brain did. It got rid of connections it didn't need anymore. Um, so there are some things that you can't hear. There are obviously some sounds where you just don't know how to place your tongue to make those sounds. So you need somebody who can give you feedback, even if that's just a native, not necessarily an accent coach, but just a native, right? Now, just a native can only tell you if you sound good, um, if you're making the proper sounds. Uh, an accent coach is going to have more like a broader perspective where they know maybe more of some of the technical things. They have more experience with common problems that English learners face or whatever language we're talking about. Um, they're going to be able to maybe help to guide you a little bit better on how you need to change your tongue, where just a regular native, they just speak. They've never tried to feel their tongue or thought about it. And especially me, apparently, I have a really good and useful, interesting way on how I describe things that makes sense to a lot of people. So that's my superpower, I guess. um, Sometimes people get confused, but more often than not, I've had much more positive feedback than negative feedback from most people I've worked with. So, um, an accent coach isn't required, but if English is your first foreign language, and or you really don't know what you're doing, like you're not sure, what should I do, when should I do it, what's more effective, what's less effective, then it does help to at least get some basic info from an accent coach, touch base with them, at least once a week, if nothing else, preferably more than that. But, and it could just be a 30-minute session. It doesn't have to be like a whole hour long class where they're teaching you. It's, um, there's a lot of things that they could actually teach you, but even if they are actively teaching you and not just like giving you some feedback, you need to be spending most of the time on your own outside of class, playing with the sound, making little changes, working with minimal pairs and trying to hear the difference between similar sounds. And those are the kind of tools I'm trying to give you guys so that you don't really need like an accent coach. You just need somebody to give you feedback and tell you if you sound right. And then you know how to go and make the little changes to improve it. Right. And I'm giving you minimal pairs so that you can start to hear the difference between the sounds instead of paying somebody to sit there and you know do drills with you. Um, if you don't have an accent coach, it's not the end of the world. It's preferable. It probably is the most effective if you don't know what you're doing. Um, but it's not required. Okay, so if you don't have one, what I would recommend is find someone, just like an informal tutor on italki or wherever. But an informal tutor doesn't cost a whole lot of money. A native speaker, okay, from now in American English, it's going to be kind of broad. I don't want to say from a place that speaks the accent necessarily because most of the country speaks more or less the same. But if it says they're from Texas or it says they're from Georgia or something somewhere in the South, you probably don't want that person unless you're learning more of a Southern accent. So you have to keep that in mind when you're finding a person. But find a native speaker, um, and at least once a week get feedback from them. Also record yourself because it seems weird, but when you can actually hear yourself, you actually start to notice certain things that you didn't notice before. Okay. Pay attention, observe, really try to hear what's actually going on and try to feel what's going on with your tongue. Okay. It's about building the observation with your ears and your tongue. And it takes time. Okay. Watch my videos. I'm trying to give you guys all these tools and everything you need to do that. I'm going to be talking a lot more about techniques in the relatively near future. I don't know when. I have so many things I want to get to, but I will be talking more about techniques and things that you can do for self study and all this stuff in the future. So that would be my answer for that for now. Accent coach, Despondency says accent coach or an accent coach is like a babysitter. You might, it's supposed to be might, you might end up doing the same stuff. The only thing is they keep you going and give you instant feedback as a native, I guess. That's also true. Having somebody that you're in contact with can help keep you motivated, help keep you going. Um, I've had several students, whether it's pronunciation, grammar, whatever, that meeting with me once or twice a week, the main reason they're meeting with me isn't for me to teach them. Like they want some feedback, they have some questions. It's mostly like get some conversation practice and to keep the motivation to keep going. So like practice what they learned throughout, the week or whatever. And that's perfectly fine. That's a really good use of a teacher or tutor or coach. Um, so plus the feedback is so useful, so very useful. And then Meadow again. So is it all about feedback? One word. Feedback. This the missing thing, and it is irreplaceable. He also has his tricks and techniques. Yeah, it's not all about feedback. Feedback is absolutely required in anything you do. Think about it very scientifically. Um, right? If even as a baby, right, when you're learning how to walk, right, you stand up. If you fall, okay, you made a mistake. You got feedback in the form of falling. Okay, so whatever you did with your balance, with your footing, right, how you're trying to stand, it didn't work. So you try again. You try to stand up. Maybe this time you stand for a second and then you fall over. Okay, and through all this trial and error, right, failure is the soil that success grows out of. Okay, you can't avoid the failure, and failure is good because it's going to happen. You need to try. Well, that didn't work. Let's try something else. Let's make a little change. Okay. All skill development is like that, from walking to learning a language to programming, musical instruments, everything. Okay. It's all just very simple. It's just you have to put in the effort. And, language learning is complex because there are 5 skill sets: speaking, reading, writing, listening, pronunciation, and 2 knowledge areas that fill the skill sets: the vocabulary and grammar. So it's a very big thing with multiple skills, and that's one reason why language learning seems so complicated and crazy. Um, but it's at the end of the day, it's the same basic scientific step by step. You try, it didn't work, you make a little change and try again. Okay, that's just what you have to do. So the feedback, whether that comes from somebody else or comes from yourself, is super important. When you are talking about sounds, right? If you're playing a guitar and you hear a song or whatever, and you say, "Oh, okay, so that's the note." You try to play that note, and it doesn't sound the same. Well, it's not the right note. But in languages are a little special here because you might not even hear the right vowel sound. Usually, it's a vowel sound, and so you need, if you're experienced and you speak more than one language already, it becomes less necessary, but it's still super useful, maybe for like certain key sounds and making sure that you're on the right track. But generally, for languages, because you might not actually be hearing the sounds, let alone producing them properly, you really need some other person to say, okay, yeah, that sounds good. Um, so, and it's just part of the process. And the more that you practice that, the more that you get the feedback, the more you're going to be able to have confidence in, you're hitting the right spots, you're hearing the right things. So it takes time, it takes practice. Super important. Um, but yes, I also have tricks and techniques. um, Again, shadowing is probably the single best technique. You don't have to do it necessarily, but if you want to have a perfect or near perfect accent, I think you kind of have to do shadowing to some extent, in some way. Um, but yeah, there's little tricks and techniques and hacks that I try to give you guys as well, and those are just things that try to make things a little easier. You don't have to use them, but they're things that you can play with and see if they help you. Um, so let Josh tell you I might not be the right person to answer. Yeah. Well, there you go. I answered. I did. He has not answered any of questions yet. Well, now I have. There we go. I know I'm behind us. I'm sorry. um, Okay, he's trying to answer everyone, so stay patient. Yes, exactly. I feel like I'm in a weird place at this point. He will get to them eventually, don't worry. Yes, I will get to everybody's questions. Problem is, sometimes I'm long-winded. I know. I'm sorry, guys. But and sometimes I speak a little bit in circles. That's a problem I have because sometimes I have to speak out loud to get to the point that I'm trying to say to myself to just filter through my thoughts. Sorry. Um, but sometimes I think there's certain points that come up while I'm speaking that I think are very, very important and I want to expand upon so that everybody can benefit. So that's okay. Um, okay, Steve says, last live you told me that use this. In this case sounds strange. It's not this hard. Wait, okay, so that using, you told me that using this uh, in the case of it's not this hard sounds strange. I know, word order. um, it's we would probably it's a bitch. There's another curse word for you. Word order. So, can you tell me an example that is right to use this to emphasize? Off the top of my head, no. Um, I probably mentioned this last time, maybe not. We don't tend to use the word this as a word of emphasis, but we can